Chapter 4572. I'm not as weak as you think. But, Hua Jin said seriously, Alice looked very nervous, so I thought you were in danger. She's not wrong. If I were to be arrested by the FBI and sent to the military court, it would be troublesome. But how could I let those idiots arrest me so easily? Alice was confused because she was concerned about him. All right. Hua Jin raised both his hands in surrender. Just take it that I'm causing trouble for you. Gong Jie looked at him deeply and suddenly walked in front of him. He stretched out his hand, held the back of his neck, and gently rested his head on his chest. I'm very happy that you're here. Hua Jin listened to his powerful heartbeat and his uneasy mood calmed down a little. Gong Jie, have you really decided? You've decided to be with me. Hua Jin was still a little doubtful. You? Why did you decide to be with me? I don't know. When it comes to relationships, no one can be sure. I was wondering why my sister would like a guy like Mu Yaja. After a pause, Gong Jie closed his eyes. But now I'm relieved. Whether it's liking or being moved, it's usually a matter of a single thought. A single thought? Hua Jin couldn't help but smile. Is this what love at first sight means? Gong Jie pursed his lips. Is it? I only know that I really hated you when I first saw you. Hua Jin. Hated? Hua Jin was doubtful. Why do you hate me? Why do you have to monopolize my sister? Gong Jie frowned slightly. My sister belongs to me alone. Why should she have a younger brother like you? Oh, Hua Jin replied. It's like this. At that time, I had a very special feeling for Shirshir. At first, I thought that I must have fallen in love with her to have such a special feeling. Later on, I realized that the kind of warmth she gave me was the kind of warmth that belonged to a family. Perhaps it was because I didn't have any concept of family since I was young, so being with her gave me a sense of belonging. Plus, she's a little older than me. Upon hearing this, Gong Jie's usually cold eyes instantly softened. From now on, wherever I am, it will be your home. When Hua Jin heard this, he was deeply moved. All right, it's settled then. The two of them looked at each other. At this moment, Alice's voice suddenly came through the radio. Little Jie, it's time to act. Gong Jie put on his headset and replied expressionlessly, Gather at the port in half an hour. Yes. Be careful. After Gong Jie finished speaking, he turned to Hua Jin and said, You follow me. Don't act on your own, understand? Do you need me to shoot? No need. Then these two guns. When I'm down, it'll be time for you to protect me. Do you understand? Hua Jin nodded. Gong Jie walked to the window, pulled open the curtains, and counted down in his heart. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Boom! There was a loud explosion. The artillery shell blasted a huge crater 300 meters away from the hospital. A row of houses were on fire. Originally, there was a shelter for refugees near the hospital. Now, all the refugees had gathered at the hospital, and it had become a wasteland. In the hospital, someone screamed hysterically, Air raid! It's an air raid! Chapter 4573. The air raid alarm went off instantly. Outside the corridor, doctors and nurses were rushing around. Quick! Everyone gather and take refuge in the hospital's air raid shelter. There's an air raid. Everyone, pay attention. This hospital usually accepted the wounded from the war. Originally, in the war-torn zone, there was a shortage of resources and medical equipment. They could only treat some external injuries. Refugees who were infected with the plague were not accepted by the hospital. Most of the patients were either missing an arm or a leg. With the help of the nurses, they struggled to run to the underground air raid shelter. Gong Jie grabbed Hua Jin's hand and broke through the door. As soon as he broke through the door, Hua Jin saw the long corridor full of injured people. The corridor was packed with people. There are so many people. Follow me. Gong Jie pulled Hua Jin and stuck close to the wall. They avoided the panicking injured people and finally arrived at the staircase. Unlike those who were using crutches or supporting the injured with broken arms, they had all four limbs and were able to move freely. They went down to the first floor in no time. Gong Jie saw the FBI agents guarding the entrance at a glance. All of them had blonde hair and blue eyes. They were particularly eye-catching in the crowd of dark-skinned people. Gong Jie and Hua Jin, on the other hand, were conspicuous. The FBI agents also noticed them immediately. Reporting, target spotted. Attack. Execute the arrest plan. A few blonde men broke through the crowd and walked toward Gong Jie and Hua Jin with difficulty. Gong Jie turned around and glanced at the floor-to-ceiling window in the corridor. He pushed Hua Jin away a little. Then, with a powerful roundhouse kick, he shattered the floor-to-ceiling window. Crash! The glass shattered all over the floor. Gong Jie grabbed Hua Jin's hand and rushed out with him. Behind them, they heard American English with a New York accent. Don't hurt the refugees. Attention! Unless absolutely necessary, don't shoot. Don't hurt the target. Don't hurt the innocent. When the FBI carried out their plan, they first had to comply with international security laws. No matter how special the situation was, they could not harm refugees or citizens of other countries. This was also part of Gong Jie's plan. Create chaos. Taking advantage of the chaos, they could shake off the FBI's pursuit. In fact, things were going according to his plan. Gong Jie held Hua Jin's hand and rushed through the crowd to find his men guarding outside the door. Two of the mercenaries had already driven a car over. When they saw Gong Jie and Hua Jin running over, the car immediately started. Gong Jie helped Hua Jin into the car first. The engine had already started and the car was already more than 10 meters away. He ran a few steps and jumped into the car. With one hand on the car door and the other holding the gun, he turned around and saw the two agents chasing after him at lightning speed. He took out his gun, aimed at one of the men's knees, and shot twice. When the other agent saw that Gong Jie was about to leave, he couldn't hold back anymore. He raised his wrist and aimed his gun at Gong Jie's knees. Hua Jin saw it, but before he could shout, Gong Jie had already made the first move. Bang! He shot that man's wrist. Ouch! The car quickly shook them off. Gong Jie got into the car and slammed the door shut. He smoothed his messy hair and finally heaved a sigh of relief. Hua Jin asked, "Are we safe now?" "Not yet. Before we board the ship, we are still in danger." Gong Jie turned his head and looked at Hua Jin. "Are you scared?" Chapter 4574. There was a kind of superstition about him. He always felt that Gong Jie, this name, this man, was omnipotent. As long as he was here, even if the sky fell down and the world ended, he would protect him and ensure his safety. The car drove towards the port. Hua Jin suddenly asked suspiciously, "Will there be FBI agents at the port?" "I don't know." Gong Jie looked at the back of the car through the window and did not see anyone chasing after them. Now that there's a riot, those American guys should be panicking. After Gong Jie said that, Hua Jin still did not let down his guard. Until the car reached the port, everything was unbelievably smooth. Alice was already waiting at the port. When she saw Gong Jie and Hua Jin, she immediately walked over. "Here again." Hua Jin held his forehead with a headache. "The last time I was here, I think I was kidnapped to East Africa. Not long after, I'm revisiting the old place." "Don't tell me you can't bear to leave East Africa and refuse to leave." "No." Hua Jin immediately showed a frightened expression. "I can't wait to put on my wings and leave this place." "All right, cut the crap. Hurry up and get on the boat." Alice kicked Hua Jin's back and chased him onto the boat. Feeling aggrieved, Hua Jin turned around and glared at her resentfully. "Violent woman. If you continue to talk nonsense, I won't use this to chase you onto the boat." As Alice said that, she pulled out a gun from her waist belt and aimed it at him. Hua Jin was so frightened that he quickly shrunk his shoulders and boarded the boat. Gong Jie stepped onto the boat ladder and turned around to look at Alice. He wanted to say something but stopped. In the end, he did not say anything. Alice looked at him and suddenly smiled. "Why are you looking at me?" "Nothing." Gong Jie casually threw the gun at her. Alice caught it and shook her head helplessly. She took the opportunity to clip the gun behind her waist. With just a glance, they understood each other's intentions. Alice exhaled, turned around, and boarded the ship. The armed cargo ship gradually left the port. Hua Jin leaned against the bow of the ship and looked at the distant mountain peak. Peace is great. It's great to live in a peaceful country. Life was too fragile. Therefore, he had to cherish the present and grasp the present. Gong Jie walked to his side and leaned against the bow with him. He gently bumped his shoulder and asked, "What are you thinking about?" I'm thinking that it's precisely because life is so fragile that we should cherish it even more. Gong Jie smiled deeply. You don't have to cherish life. You just have to cherish me. What do you mean by cherishing? Seize every minute and second of being together. Gong Jie rarely said such romantic words. Hua Jin was flattered. He stared at him. Suddenly he leaned over, put his arms around the back of his neck, and kissed him deeply. He rarely took the initiative to kiss him. Gong Jie smiled and hugged his shoulders. While enjoying the kiss, he also deepened the kiss. This was a kiss after surviving a disaster. It was also a kiss that Hua Jin had been late for a long time. Under the setting sun, Gong Jie and Hua Jin kissed tightly. The warm rays of the sunset poured down on their bodies, softly plating their figures with a layer of gold. They were so beautiful that they looked like sculptures. Alice stood at the head of the lower deck. Separated by the railing, the sea breeze blew on her face. It had been a long time since she felt cool. Chapter 45-75. In a dilapidated house in the capital. It had just rained heavily, and even the air felt damp. In addition, there was also the smell of green grass in the air. Bai Ran did not like this smell very much. She sat in front of the table by the window and looked out of the window in a daze. She did not like the wet grass smell in the air, but she had to open the window to get some fresh air after the heavy rain. The table in front of her was very old. When she was studying, this table was piled full of review questions and homework. After graduation, it was cleaned up a little and became a simple dressing table. There were some cheap skincare products on it, the most basic moisturizing products. A facial mask was only 5 yuan, but it was still a little extravagant for her, who had just graduated and only had a salary of 4,000 to 5,000 yuan. She did not dare to be too extravagant. She applied it once every 4 days, on her face, neck, and knees. In short, she made the best use of everything. Although she had just graduated and her salary was not high, Bai Ran had been very vain since she was young. Sitting in front of the mirror, Bai Ran looked at her face in the mirror and was slightly lost in thought. The 24-year-old Bai Ran had already grown into a slender and elegant woman. She looked like a beauty. Bai Ran, are you ready? Someone shouted outside the door. Bai Ran gently patted her face that was stiff because of nervousness and hurriedly stood up. Yes, I'm ready. She walked into the narrow living room and saw a middle-aged woman waiting for her. Seeing that she was wearing ordinary clothes, she could not help but feel a little disgusted. How can you dress like this for such a big event like a blind date? Don't you think it's embarrassing? Auntie, I don't have any nice dresses. This is the most decent one. Bai Ran paused and asked tentatively, so it's another blind date? How many blind dates have you had this week? You know. Since you know, don't let me down. You're not young anymore. It's better to get married early. Bai Ran said weakly, Auntie, I'm only 24 years old. Marriage is not urgent, right? You're not in a hurry, but I'm not in a hurry. How long do you want me to take care of you? Bai Ran's breathing suddenly became rapid. There were several times when she wanted to leave this house, but she had just started working and did not have much savings. It was not easy to save a few thousand yuan, but it was not even enough to pay the rent. The memories of his childhood were already very distant. She vaguely remembered that when she was in kindergarten, her parents had left her in a car accident, along with the child she was pregnant with. Overnight, there was only one person left in the warm home. However, the pain of losing his parents was not as deep as it had been with the passage of time. After that incident, she lived with her grandparents and returned to her hometown to study. However, when she was in junior high school, her grandfather passed away from lung cancer. On the 7th day of her grandfather's death, her grandmother died of a myocardial infarction due to the heavy blow. She died suddenly in front of her grandfather's memorial tablet. From then on, she was kicked around like a ball in front of her uncles and aunts. In the end, it was her youngest aunt who was merciful and took her to her side, providing for her food, clothing, and education. His aunt's surname was Jiang. In order to settle down, Bai Kun temporarily followed his uncle's surname, Jiang Bai Kun. Chapter 45-76. However, after graduation, her aunt kept urging her to go on blind dates. There was a premise to this. Her aunt had a son, but he was not proficient in his studies and did not even pass high school. In the end, after graduating from technical school, he did not do a proper job and always stayed at home playing games on his computer. Little Ant had placed all her hopes on her. However, Byran had just graduated from university. As a fashion designer, how much could she achieve as a fledgling? Therefore, this conservative woman felt that it was useless for a woman to study until university. It was better for her to get married as soon as possible. However, blind dates were definitely not that simple. This little ant had conditions for the blind date. The first requirement for the person she found for Byran was that he had a successful career. Even if he did not have a successful career, he had to be rich. As a betrothal gift, a house in the capital had to be transferred to her son's name. The first blind date was with a demolition family. A house in the capital had been demolished, and he was worth hundreds of millions. However, he was divorced and had a child. The second blind date was with a small boss, but he was old. She had gone on blind dates several times, and he was not younger than 35 years old. Byran was angry. What did they take her for? Every time she protested, her aunt would take it for granted. She had raised her for so long, studied in the capital, and spent money on food and clothes. Now that she was of age, shouldn't she repay her? Her uncle's family was in the capital and they were old citizens. Other than the old and broken house left behind by their grandparents, their son was getting married, and they did not have a wedding house. Which girl would be willing to marry a man who did not do a proper job and had no education or ability? And a family of 4 squeezed into a 50-square-meter house? Byran was young and beautiful, so she was naturally the target of her aunt's expectations. Byran naturally brushed off the first few blind dates. She thought that she could finally stop. Not long after, she found another person for her. Today, she did not know how to brush it off. Byran took the address and walked out of the neighborhood. Suddenly, she felt very sad. She just wanted to do her job properly. Yi Yuqin watched Byran leave the neighborhood with a gloomy face. What sin have I committed to bring back such a money-losing thing? If she drives away the blind date today, I will definitely chase her out with a broom. A middle-aged man's lazy voice came from behind. What kind of person did you find for her today? Yi Yuqin turned around. She was quite satisfied at the mention of her blind date. I heard that he's the boss of a renovation company. He's quite rich and agreed to my conditions. He has seen her photo. As long as she agrees, any condition is negotiable. Who knows, she might have angered them away again. She's really capable in this aspect. She dares. Yi Yuqin was infuriated. I was having a good conversation. She dares to push me away again. They took the bus to the subway and finally arrived at the cafe in the city center after passing through the crowd. After the rain, the sun soon came out, and it became a little stuffy. This cafe was one of the more famous ones in the capital. Sitting in the cafe, Byran added the man's WeChat and sent a message, I'm here. Wait for me, I'll be there soon. Chapter 4577. Temperament was really a magical thing. Just by looking at this handsome back, she could vaguely imagine that it should be a young and handsome man. She retracted her gaze and looked out of the window, only to see a middle-aged balding man hurriedly passing by the window. She looked at him until she saw him walk into the coffee shop. Suddenly, she had a bad premonition. Byran stared blankly as the man walked in front of her and said in a very apologetic tone, Sorry, I'm 5 minutes late. Did you wait long? No, I just arrived too. Byran's face stiffened as she clenched her fists. She actually didn't have any expectations, but she didn't expect that her aunt would find a man of this age for her. The man politely raised his hand, tucked his sparse hair behind his ear, and sat down. Do you want something to drink? I'm fine. Milk coffee, is that okay? Yes. The man called the waiter over and ordered 2 cups of coffee and some desserts. Then, he turned his head and looked at the girl opposite him. It could be seen that the Byran opposite him was young, immature, and had a hint of immaturity. Her appearance was beautiful and exquisite. Most importantly, her temperament was excellent, with a hint of scholarly aura. It was said that she was a graduate of a famous university. In that case, her brain was also very bright. For a businessman like him, when looking for a partner, he also looked at the other party's education. The man smiled and said, Let me introduce myself first. My name is Mo Kong. I'm 39 years old this year. I've been married twice before, but I don't have any children. What about you? Byran lowered her eyes and didn't look at him. By Ran, 24 years old. I just graduated. Do you have a job? Yes. Let me tell you about my general situation. The man began to introduce himself. From the renovation company he ran, the size of its scale, the annual benefits, how many apartments he had in the capital, how much the property fee was per square meter, how much the car he drove, and even the annual insurance premiums of the car would be taken out to brag. His mouth, other than a mouthful of teeth that were yellowed by smoke, was filled with a strong sense of superiority. The more Byran listened, the more disgusted she became. The man was boasting while paying attention to Byran's expression. However, he didn't see any yearning or interest on her face. Instead, he saw a kind of boredom. What happened? The man asked with concern. I've said so much, but you haven't told me about yourself. Byran sighed. Mr. M.O., to tell you the truth, this blind date with you was forced by my aunt. Yes, I know. The man said with a knowing tone. Byran continued. Actually, I haven't decided to get married yet. The man's face stiffened. You don't plan to get married? Are you rejecting me? Or, did he want to use this opportunity to raise more conditions? Byran took a deep breath and said, You're very good. I can't match you. So, Mr. M.O., why don't you look for someone else for the blind date? She wanted to end this blind date in a perfunctory manner. After she finished speaking, she was about to pick up her bag. Just as she was about to get up, the man's face suddenly darkened. You and your aunt are singing the same tune. Are you playing with me? No. Chapter 4578. Jiang Bai, I think you still haven't figured it out, have you? Your aunt has told me everything about you. Do you really not know what she's thinking right now, or are you pretending not to know? She's in a hurry to marry you off, do you know that? Byran was stunned and fell onto the sofa. Humph. I was wrong. She's not marrying you off. She just wants to sell you to me. I'll buy it, okay? What did you say? The man knocked on the table. I heard that your cousin has never worked since he graduated from a technical school. Does your aunt have any other houses? Who doesn't want to have a house and a car when they get married now? But why don't you look at the current property prices? They're easily tens of thousands of yuan per square meter. As for me, I'm sincere. If you're willing to marry me, then as a betrothal gift, I'll give your aunt a house. This is also your aunt's request. As for you, follow me. As long as you give birth to a fat boy for me in the future, you can enjoy life with me. Byran's face turned ashen. She thought that Yi Yuqin would despise her, but she didn't think that she was being sold. Was this a blind date? Was this human trafficking? A house in exchange for a wife. How could she make such an outrageous request? If it weren't for the fact that you're young, beautiful, highly educated, and have never had a boyfriend in school, with your conditions, a house of more than 10 million yuan. That's too flattering of you. The man paused for a moment, then said, I heard that you've been on a blind date a few times, and they've all been angered back by you. Your aunt has some complaints about this. It's not that I want to criticize you, but you're too willful. Your parents died early, and your aunt worked hard to raise you. Don't you know how to be grateful? Besides, am I not good enough? We definitely won't treat you shabbily for your food and clothing. Byran was so angry that her entire body froze. Byran, don't think too highly of yourself. You know very well what your background is. I'm with you. You're the one who made a fortune. Before he could finish, Byran said, Scram. What? Scram. Byran stood up and threw her bag at him. I told you to scram. Did you hear me? The man was infuriated by her attitude. He originally wanted to scold her, but when he looked around and saw that there were so many people watching, he suddenly felt embarrassed. He spat and left without looking back. Baikun slumped down powerlessly. She wanted to hold it in, but more and more criticism came from around her. Finally, she couldn't hold back the humiliation in her heart and sobbed. Woo 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 woo. The people around her kept looking at her. A blind date. What kind of parent is this? She actually found such a man for her daughter. How ungentlemanly. Haven't you heard? Her parents died a long time ago, and she was raised by her aunt. He's being disliked. How pitiful. Diagonally in front, the straight back slowly turned around. The man looked in the direction of Bai Ran and saw her sitting on the sofa in a sorry state. His handsome eyebrows furrowed slightly. He didn't know why, but when he saw her red eyes, his heart was slightly moved. He suddenly stood up and walked towards her. Bai Hao stooped and gritted his teeth. He was crying silently when a handkerchief was handed to him. Chapter 4579. Bai Yu looked up blankly, only to meet the man's pitiful gaze. It's him? The man who sat diagonally in front of her just now. This was a man who was as gentle as jade. He had handsome facial features, a deep outline, and a pair of eyes that had a faint smile. However, there was a trace of feminine beauty between his brows, but because of this extraordinary smile, it was perfectly blended. She was a little surprised by the handkerchief he handed over, but she still politely thanked him and took it. So embarrassed. She was sitting in such a quiet cafe with so many people, yet she was so down and out. She must have become a laughingstock in everyone's eyes. Can I sit down? The man did not leave, but asked indifferently. Bai Yu did not refuse and nodded lightly. Sit down. The man sat down in front of her. At this moment, Bai Yu's phone suddenly rang. Bai Yu picked up the phone and saw that it was an unknown number. Just as she picked it up, the man's fierce voice came from the other side. Jiang Bai Yu. You made me lose face today. In the future, I won't let you have an easy time. I think you shouldn't go back. Your aunt said that if the blind date didn't work out tonight, she'll definitely chase you out with a broom. With that, the man angrily hung up the phone. Bai Yu put down the phone with a cold expression, but looked at the man opposite her with a slightly shocked expression. She pursed her lips, feeling even more embarrassed. Your name is Bai Yu? The man suddenly asked. Bai Yu was a little surprised and finally looked at her seriously. She was a little surprised by the man's surprised tone. We have met before? Oh, nothing. The man slightly curled his lips and smiled. The waiter came over and served the coffee. Bai Yu asked, Are you waiting for someone? The man looked out of the window. Same as you. Same. Bai Yu was in disbelief. Do you know why I came to the cafe? Blind date, right? The man's handsome face showed a look of understanding. But, it seems like you were forced? Bai Yu's tears gradually dried up, but she was still very depressed. When she thought about going back and facing her aunt's storm, she felt a heavy stone pressing down on her heart. The man ordered another cup of coffee. Seeing her disappointed expression, he asked, Coincidentally, I'm alone too. Do you mind? It's fine, I don't mind. Bai Hao couldn't think of a good place to go. He couldn't go home for the time being. She just wanted to sit quietly for a while. Where are your parents? The man suddenly asked. When I was very young, they died in a car accident, Bai Hao said quietly. It wasn't until later that I heard from my grandmother that my mother was pregnant at that time. In fact, not only did I lose my parents, I also lost a younger brother or sister. She didn't know why, but chatting with this man made her feel relaxed. Therefore, with this topic, it was as if she was pouring out her grievances to him. She poured out all the oppression and pain that she had endured since she was young. Chapter 4580. The man listened silently, like a loyal listener. Bai Ran said sadly, I know it wasn't easy for her to raise me since I was young, but did she never have any selfish thoughts about me? My cousin couldn't study well, so she placed all her hopes on me. I also promised her that no matter what happened in the future, I would take care of her until she died. But I just graduated not long ago, and my job is just the beginning. How can I have great achievements after graduating? My aunt probably finally lost her patience and is anxious to marry me off. That's fine, but she actually asked for such an outrageous condition. She was wondering why her blind date partner was getting older and had a worse attitude each time. If it wasn't for today, she really wouldn't know that she was being ruthlessly schemed against by her aunt. The man suddenly asked, What do you think about marriage? Bai Ran gently rubbed the handle of the coffee. Actually, I've never had any illusions about marriage. My future husband doesn't need to be too rich, nor does he need to have a wealthy identity. Even if he rents a house, it's fine as long as he gives me a home and doesn't let me wander around. The man was puzzled. But didn't your aunt ask your future husband to buy her a house? I won't compromise on this matter. Bai Yu tried to restrain himself. Since she raised me up, I won't argue with her about anything. But if she wants to use my marriage to exchange for this house, I'll definitely not do it. The man raised his eyebrows slightly, and his jade-like face suddenly raised a touch of probing. Then, what do you think of me? Byran looked up in confusion. The man stared at her eyes seriously and said word by word, "Let's get married. Are you willing?" Byran widened her eyes slightly, and her breathing stopped slightly. Creak, the rusty iron door was pushed open, and Byran's weak voice could be heard. "I'm back." Returning home from the crowded subway station during the evening rush hour, she was already exhausted. Yi Yuqin walked out of the kitchen wearing an apron. She rubbed her hands on the apron and looked expectant. How was the blind date this time? Bai Hao didn't answer. Instead, he wore a lukewarm expression. "Auntie, where did you keep the household register?" Household register? Yi Yuqin did not hide her surprise when she heard that Byran wanted to take the household register. Did this mean that the blind date was a success? Otherwise, what was the point of using the household register? Asking for the household registration booklet meant that they were going to get the marriage certificate. She had never expected this development. Originally, she had been scared out of her wits. However, Byran had angered her blind date and made her run away. Otherwise, she would dawdle. Although she didn't reject the blind date, she didn't explicitly agree either. A long delay meant trouble. She was so surprised that she felt like she was in a dream. Great! This is great! Is this a success? Yi Yuqin's greedy expression appeared on her face. Bai Hao nodded gently. He could see the ambition in her eyes more clearly. All right, just you wait. I'll get it for you. Yi Yuqin hurriedly rummaged through the drawers and took out the household register. She carefully handed it to Byran. Are you going to get your marriage certificate now? The Civil Affairs Bureau is closed now. Byran said, let's go get the marriage certificate tomorrow. Aya, this is too sudden. Chapter 4581. At this time, Yi Yuqin started to be hypocritical. Aya, my daughter is about to get married. As her aunt, I can't bear to part with her. But I can't keep you by my side all the time. A grown girl can't be kept at home. Since this matter was settled, she had to ask about the house some other day. Yi Yuqin asked indirectly, since you've decided to get married, why don't you bring him home to meet you? Do you want to meet him? Of course. Then we'll have to wait until tomorrow. Byran said, it's too late today. He has something to do. That's true. This big boss of a renovation company must be very busy. Tomorrow, I'll prepare a table of good wine and dishes. Then, you can call him home and have a meal together. You're getting married, so you have to meet his parents. We've treated you like your biological parents for so many years. In the future, we'll be the ones to send you off to get married. Yi Yuqin's enthusiasm made her even more disappointed. Okay. She answered hastily and went back to her room. The next day, Byran woke up very early. When she woke up, she received a text message from that man. Remember to wear a white shirt and put on light makeup. She did not have time to contact the man. Yesterday, the man had mentioned the marriage to her too suddenly. When the man introduced himself, she was not in the mood to listen carefully, so she did not even remember his name. If she asked again, she would feel embarrassed. The reason why she agreed to marry him on a whim was that Byran was getting more and more exhausted by the marriage that her aunt had arranged for her. She had a little interest in revenge and a little bit of anger. Moreover, she had a good impression of this man. Hence, the lightning marriage was completed in one go. As for why the man had chosen her as his marriage partner, the man frankly said that marriage in such a city was too burdensome for someone of his status. The house was easily worth more than 10 million, the car, the gift money. Actually, the marriage he wanted was very simple. A very small house, even if it was only 2 bedrooms and 2 living rooms. Every day when he came home from work, he could lean on the bed with his wife and watch TV. This was his most ordinary dream. He had also promised her that after marriage, they would live together according to her wishes. She just had to be mentally prepared. As for the matters between husband and wife, it was all up to her. Marriage was obviously such an important thing. Why did it seem so frivolous when it came to this man? What if they were not suitable for each other, what would happen if they divorced in the future? Bai Chong didn't dare to think too much. Perhaps it was because he was really stimulated that he didn't think too much about the future. Holding the household register and ID card, Ran put on a white shirt, put on some light makeup, and went out. The man sent a text message saying that he was almost at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau. Ran was afraid that the morning rush hour would delay him and make him wait too long, so he took a taxi directly to the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau. The man was already in the registration hall. He had asked for 2 forms in advance and was filling them out seriously. Hao walked to him and stood behind him. At first glance, he saw the old man's vigorous handwriting. The name was a little messy, but it looked very nice, like a carefully designed signature. Gu Chengze. Chapter 4582. He was just like his name. This man gave people a feeling of gentleness, and so did his name. Have you been here for a long time? The man looked back at her and said, No, I just got here not long ago. I was afraid that you would wait for too long, so I quickly took a taxi here. There was a bit of traffic on the way. Yin explained carefully and sat down opposite him. The man handed her a pen and paper and said to her, I've already filled in my name. You just have to fill in your name. Okay. Kun held a pen and paper and filled his name in the female column. Then, he copied some words that looked like a declaration and passed it to him. So this man's name was Gu Chengze. It was easy to remember. She remembered it immediately. Gu Chengze saw that she handed him the pen and paper and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Why are you giving it to me? You should give it to the window. Oh. Yin stood up in a panic and was about to walk to the window when the man called out to her again. Wait. What's wrong? Gu Chengze stood up and walked to her side. He was 1.85 meters tall, and his aura was almost a notch above hers. She had been sitting down yesterday, so she didn't realize that he was so tall. Because they had said goodbye at the cafe, she didn't notice his height. He had been sitting down since he entered the registration hall, so she didn't have the chance to see him. She didn't expect him to be so tall. Also, from her angle, his side profile was unbelievably exquisite. She had never seen a man with such exquisite features in the real world. The man did not notice her scrutiny. Instead, he took the application form from her hands and handed it to the window. After exchanging a few words with the staff, he turned around and said to her, Did you bring your household register and ID card? Yes. Yin gave him all the documents and asked, I also brought the cost of the production. It's fine. How can I let my wife pay for this? The man said as he took out his wallet. However, the word wife made Yin lower her head shyly. She didn't know where to look. Suddenly, she realized that it seemed unnecessary to keep questioning her choice on the way here. This man seemed to be a good marriage partner. All along, they had been dating before getting married. After dating for so long, once they got married, it was very easy for their marriage to go wrong and fall into crisis. Then, a marriage without any understanding must be even more dangerous, right? She didn't know anything about this man. Although she had never been in a relationship before, he gave her an unprecedented sense of security. Most importantly, if she got married, it would mean that she would have her own little family in the future. She didn't know if this feeling was reliable or not. All right. The man suddenly interrupted her thoughts and said to her, Let's go take some photos. Chong came back to his senses and nodded. He took back his ID card and household register and walked to a room with the man. The photographer stood behind the camera and directed the two of them to sit in front of the red background. The man deliberately wore a white shirt, which was similar to her style. The snow-white shirt made his skin clean and delicate, and his temperament was refined. Chapter 4583. Both of you should sit closer together. Smile, woman, you should smile too. Today is a big day. Don't be so stiff. Be more natural. Yes. Your smile is too stiff. The man is holding the woman's shoulder. Gu Chengze raised his hand and gently put it on Ran's shoulder. Hao tried hard to ease his tense mood. Finally, he showed a natural smile. Okay. That's it. Hold it for 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Snap. The cameraman took a few photos and put down the camera. He walked over and congratulated Gu Chengze and Ran. Congratulations to the two newlyweds. After the photo shoot, Ran and Gu Chengze walked out of the room and sat on a long bench, waiting for the certificate to be completed. There was a long silence between the two of them. Gu Chengze, on the other hand, was silently looking out the window. She didn't know if he was from the military, but his posture was as straight as a pine tree. You, Byran hesitated and finally said, do you have time tonight? Gu Chengze turned to look at her. What's wrong? My aunt said that she wants to meet you. Byran quickly explained, after all, they raised me since I was young, so I'm considered half a newlyweds. Now that we're married, she said that she wants to invite you for dinner. Before Gu Chengze could say anything, she said guiltily, if you really don't have time, then forget it. I haven't said anything. The man frowned slightly and said, do you want to have dinner together? Yes. Okay. The man agreed without hesitation. Byran finally sighed in relief. Gu Chengze, Jiang Byran. Their names were called from the window. Gu Chengze stood up, and Byran hurriedly got up as well. They followed him to the window, and the staff handed them 2 brand new marriage certificates. Congratulations to the 2 newlyweds. A handsome man and a beautiful woman. What a match. Gu Chengze took the marriage certificate and handed the other one to her. When Byran received the marriage certificate, she felt like she was floating. It felt so surreal. When she flipped to the next page, her name, date of birth, age, and the photo of the 2 of them sitting in front of a red background. She was really married. She had married a man she had known for less than a day. No wedding, no garland, no diamond ring. She had married herself off so carelessly. For a moment, Bai Kun didn't know if his choice was right or wrong. Gu Chengze looked at her stunned face and still felt that it was a pity. It was too rushed, and I didn't have time to prepare a diamond ring. However, it won't be too late to prepare for the wedding. Wedding? Bai Hao looked up in surprise. Our wedding? What is it? Gu Chengze raised his eyebrows. Don't you want to hold a wedding? How could he not want to hold one? Like every girl, a wedding was the most important ceremony in her life. He was looking forward to this ceremony, but at the same time, he was filled with fantasy. He wondered what her wedding ceremony would be like. Bai Yu chuckled. There's no rush for the wedding. Most importantly, they would first get to know each other and cultivate feelings for each other. The wedding would be a matter of course. Chapter 45-84. At noon, Gu Chengze and Byran went to a restaurant for lunch. It was a simple Chinese meal, but the restaurant Gu Chengze chose was in the most inconspicuous corner of the street. It was not far from the marriage registration office, but the food was delicious. Gu Chengze parked his car in the underground parking lot. He drove a Volkswagen. She had seen many Volkswagens, but it was the first time she saw this model. The letters Phaeton were printed on the back. In this city, people who drove Volkswagens were salaried workers and the rich. This man seemed to come from an ordinary family. This car looked very ordinary, but once inside, the luxurious interior made Bai Kun a little dumbfounded. The control panel seemed to be made of mahogany. Was it modified? Where are we going? To buy gifts. Gifts? Yeah. Gu Chengze drove the car to the shopping center. To Byran, they were her uncle and aunt, but to Gu Chengze, they were his parents-in-law. It was his first time visiting his parents-in-law, so he naturally had to bring some gifts. Gu Chengze went to the shopping center and bought a pearl necklace for Yi Yuqin. Byran said that Yi Yuqin liked pearl necklaces the most, and her uncle, Jiang Muyuan, liked jade pipes. The old man next door had a jade pipe every day, and Jiang Muyuan was always envious. Other than the gifts for their first meeting, Gu Chengze also bought cigarettes, alcohol, donkey hide gelatin, and some women's skincare products. In total, it cost nearly 10,000 yuan. Byran was a little embarrassed. It was her first time eating with Gu Chengze, and she was already spending so much money. When it was time to pay, Byran looked at the number on the meter and felt her scalp tingle. She looked at Gu Chengze's back with guilt and said nervously, "This time, I've made you spend so much money." Gu Chengze turned around and was stunned, but he smiled. "What do you mean by spending money? It's my first time meeting my parents-in-law, so I have to be polite." Byran was secretly touched by his thoughtfulness and courtesy. She wondered if her aunt would be satisfied with him when he returned home. Would she let her go? Marrying this man seemed to be the most rebellious thing she had ever done in her life. Due to the fact that her aunt had brought her up, no matter how harsh her aunt was to her, she was used to accepting it. She thought that as long as she married this man, then, in the future, She could finally get away from the endless blind dates. She admitted that when she was with him, he was like a safe haven. When he got home, Gu Chengza parked the car in front of the neighborhood. When he got out of the car, he looked at the shabby neighborhood that was obviously built in the last century and was slightly surprised. Did she live in this place? My house is in this building. Bai Ran pointed at a building in front of him shyly and said, but there's no elevator. We have to climb the stairs. I'm fine. Gu Chengza picked up the gift and said to her, let's go upstairs. He followed behind her and walked up the stairs. However, in the narrow corridor, other than being crowded, the corners were filled with cobwebs, and the originally white walls were covered in dust. The escalator was covered in dust, and the air seemed to be a little turbid. On the first floor, there were 5 households. The smoke was all directed towards the corridor. When it was mealtime, everyone was cooking, and all kinds of smoke and fumes filled the air. Chapter 4585. We're here. She walked to the door. Through the door, Bai Ran could hear the sound of cooking in the kitchen. Bai Ran took out her keys to open the door. Hearing the sound of the door opening, Yi Yuqin walked out of the kitchen. When she saw Bai Ran, she quickly asked, where is he? He. Bai Ran turned around. At that moment, Gu Chengza stepped through the door. He was so tall that he had to lower his head slightly to enter the door. It felt like he would hit the door frame. His tall height made the whole house seem even shorter. However, when Yi Yuqin saw his incomparably handsome face, her entire body froze. The man in front of her was a little too young. Also, he seemed different from the person in the photo. The owner of the renovation company in the photo was bald and old. What about the man in front of her? He was even better looking than the male celebrities on TV. More importantly, he had an inexplicable aristocratic aura. However, Yi Yuqin quickly pulled Bai Ran aside and asked suspiciously, who is this person? His name is Gu Chengza. We just registered our marriage today. As she spoke, Bai Ran took out the household registration booklet from her bag and returned it to her. Yi Yuqin immediately knocked the booklet in her hand to the ground. Gu Chengza. That's not the name of the man I introduced to you on a blind date. Bai Ran explained, that man didn't like me, so. How is that possible? Yi Yuqin didn't believe it. He saw your photo and was very satisfied with you. He couldn't stop praising you. How could he not be satisfied with you? I think you're the one who's not satisfied with him. Auntie, that man is so old. It's fine if you set me up on a blind date, but why do you always find me this kind of man? Bai Ran also vented her dissatisfaction. Yi Yuqin was furious when she heard that. Gu Chengza walked over and handed the gift to Yi Yuqin. Hello, Auntie. I'm Gu Chengza. Nice to meet you. Yi Yuqin looked at him, but she was so angry that she couldn't say anything. She ignored Gu Chengza and pulled Bai Ran into her room. After closing the door, she pushed Bai Ran to the wall and asked fiercely, so, you said you want to get married with the household registration booklet. You want to marry this man? Yeah. So. Yi Yuqin panicked. Have you registered your marriage? Yes. Bai Yu took a deep breath and puffed out her chest. He's my husband now. Pa! What she received was Yi Yuqin's exasperated slap. Do you know how much money I've spent on this blind date? I gave them a golden bracelet before they were willing to introduce it to me. Who was Emot Song? He was the big boss of Dingsheng Renovation Company, and his net worth was close to 100 million. So what if he's old? The most important thing for a man was not his good looks. Could good-looking people make a living? Can it feed you? Bai Kun finally couldn't take it anymore. Why should I rely on a man to support me? Can't I feed myself? You even know how to talk back. Yi Yuqin was about to be slapped again. This time, Bai Ran didn't give in. Instead, he forcefully grabbed her wrist. Chapter 4586. Bai Ran's words were like pearls. So you raised me just to eat my flesh. These words obviously provoked Yi Yuqin. What do you mean by eating your flesh? Why do you make it sound so bad? Yi Yuqin said exasperatedly, you also know that I raised you and this is how you repay me? You also admit that you're forcing me to repay you. Bai Ran was so angry that she was about to cry. Do you know that when I heard that man say that you sold me for a house, I was really disappointed. What do you mean I sold you for a house? How did I sell you? I sent you to a rich family to live a good life. Is that my fault? Then why didn't you bless me and him? The him that Bai Ran was referring to was Gu Chengze. I'm also very happy with him. Yi Yuqin's face was ferocious. What can he give you? Bai Ran gritted her teeth and said, what he can give me is not important. I think the most important thing is whether he can give you anything. Yi Yuqin was speechless. Originally, after you registered your marriage with him, he said that he wanted to visit you. In the end, you didn't like him from the moment he entered the house. You're married, right? You have a man to support you, right? You're all grown up now. You dare to talk to me like this? If you're so capable, get out of here and don't come back. Yi Yuqin pointed at the door in a threatening tone. Bai Ran looked at her deeply and suddenly sneered. Fine. I'll leave. She had heard this countless times. Finally this time she was disheartened. Yi Yuqin did not expect that the soft and cowardly Bai Ran would know how to resist her. She turned around, opened the door, and walked to Gu Chengze. Gu Chengze's expression did not look good, because he heard the argument between Bai Ran and Yi Yuqin. Seeing Bai Ran walk out, he walked over worriedly and blurted out, Rander? Bai Ran looked at him in surprise. Gu Chengze immediately asked, Are you okay? Bai Ran ignored the surprise in her heart and shook her head. I'm fine. She bent down and picked up the gifts that Gu Chengze had bought for her uncle and aunt. She said to him, Let's go. Gu Chengze understood what she meant. He reached out to hold her hand and walked towards the door. Yi Yuqin was so angry that she couldn't swallow her pride. She walked to the door, looked at their backs and said fiercely, If you want to chase them away, don't come back if you have the guts. Bai Yan walked away without looking back. Yi Yuqin was almost angered to death by her decisiveness, but she couldn't bring herself to ask her to stay, so she could only stare helplessly. The car shuttled through the traffic in the city center. Bai Hao sat in the car, silently looking at the street outside the window. Gu Chengze circled the park again and again. Suddenly he asked, Where are we going? Let's find a hotel. Hotel. Gu Chengze didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Why are we going to a hotel? With him around, why did she have to go to the hotel? Bai Ran explained, With my aunt's condition, she won't be able to return home for a while. Idiot. The car suddenly stopped at a crossroad. Gu Chengze turned around and looked at her seriously. Now, we're already married. Whether it's from a legal or other perspective, your home is where I am. That place is no longer your home. Chapter 45-87. Gu Chengze reached out and caressed her cheeks. Good girl, come home with me. She blushed and lowered her head. She ran her fingers through her hair. But I look so pathetic. Also, I haven't officially met your parents. My parents don't live with me. Gu Chengze said, I live alone. You live alone? Yes. But? I'm not mentally prepared yet. Although they were married, living with a man, it seemed too unexpected. She was not mentally prepared at all. Gu Chengze smiled knowingly. Don't worry, there are 2 bedrooms. You can sleep wherever you want. By the way, if you're free tomorrow, you can bring your luggage over. Gu Chengze paused and asked, Do you have any other luggage? Actually, I don't have any luggage. Bai Yan smiled bitterly. After what I did tonight, with my aunt's personality, she will definitely cut my clothes into pieces. She had left in a hurry just now. She should have taken the opportunity to pack her clothes and take them away. Other than clothes and a bunch of skincare products, she did not seem to have anything particularly valuable. Gu Chengze heard and smiled. If it's clothes, you can buy new ones. Then tomorrow when we get home later, take a shower first and tell me your measurements. The mall is downstairs. Only then did Bai Yu nod. She did not seem to know much about this man. In her impression, he should be a high-class white-collar worker who lived in an ordinary neighborhood. However, looking at his temperament, it did not seem so. Bai Yan and Gu Chengze walked to the entrance of an apartment. The apartment was above the shopping mall. It was a commercial and residential apartment. After entering the apartment, Gu Chengze went to the bathroom to prepare hot water. Bai Yan took the opportunity to look around the room. The apartment was not big. It had 2 bedrooms, 2 living rooms, and a small study. Gu Chengze walked out of the bathroom and saw that she was looking at him curiously. He explained, I lived in this apartment when I was in university. Did you buy this? I rented it. Rented? Yes. To be precise, the entire shopping mall and office building belonged to the Gu family. However, ever since he was an adult, Gu Jinglian had asked him for rent every month. Gu Chengze had to pay him the market price. Gu Chengze's lips curled into a smile. However, I pay the rent every 5 years. The next due date is the year after next. According to his estimation, the size of this apartment should be about 90 square meters, and the rent should be at least 100,000 yuan a year. That would be 500,000 yuan in 5 years. To her, it was already very impressive. The average white-collar worker could not earn so much money. What do you do for a living? Bai Chong asked tentatively. Me. Gu Chengze was the external CEO of the financial management under the Gu Corporation, which meant that he was paid according to an annual salary. Gu Jinglian hired Gu Chengze with an annual salary in order to hone his skills and train him. He also wanted the board of directors to consider whether Gu Chengze was qualified to inherit the Gu Corporation. Under normal circumstances, Gu Jinglian's salary was a combination of annual salary and dividends. The annual salary was about 3 million yuan. If the results were good, then the dividends would be very considerable. Chapter 4588. Tell me your measurements. I'll go buy some clothes. Oh. It's best if you tell me all your measurements in detail. Bai Yu blushed and said, Shall I write them down? Okay. There was a pen and paper on the table. Bai Yu blushed and wrote down her measurements on the paper. She folded the paper until it was the size of a tofu block before handing it to him. Gu Chengze smiled when he saw her put the folded tofu block in her hand. Don't worry, I won't peek. Bai Yu blushed even more when he said that. Gu Chengze left the room. Bai Yu entered the bathroom. The water was almost full. She took off her clothes and stepped into the bathtub. The moment the warm water enveloped her, she let out a sigh of contentment. It was as if the exhaustion she had accumulated for so long had finally been released for a short while. What a crazy day. She married a strange man. Then, she actually rebelled against Yi Yuqin and left her home that was like a demon's den. Finally, she came to his house. It was too crazy. Bai Yu shyly buried her face in the water and blew bubbles silently. She didn't know how long he had been gone. As she soaked, the water in the bathtub gradually turned cold. Only then did she start scrubbing. When she was done washing and drying herself, she realized that he wasn't back yet. This meant that she didn't have any clothes to change into. There was a bathrobe hanging on the wall of the bathroom. However, there was only one set. Because she came back too suddenly, he probably didn't prepare an extra bathrobe. He hadn't bought the clothes yet, so it shouldn't be a problem for her to borrow his for a while, right? With that thought, Bai Yu silently reached out and took the bathrobe down. It was so wide and big that it was effortless for her to put it on. After putting on her clothes, she had no choice but to open the door with her dirty clothes. She walked to the balcony but couldn't find the washing machine. The balcony had floor-to-ceiling windows. There was only one chair and a small table that seemed to be used for drinking coffee and admiring the night view. She looked around the house but still couldn't find the washing machine. Just as she was feeling extremely uneasy, the door suddenly opened. She looked in the direction of the sound and saw Gu Chengze coming back with bags of various sizes. She subconsciously pulled her clothes together. The bathrobe had covered her body well enough, but she was still worried about being exposed. It was almost an instinctive action. Gu Chengze was surprised to see her carrying a pile of dirty clothes. Can't you find the washing machine? In the bathroom. I only see a row of cabinets in the bathroom. I don't see a washing machine. Gu Chengze smiled and walked into the bathroom. He touched the row of cabinets and pressed them lightly. This cabinet was made to be an invisible cabinet. With a press of a button, it would open and there was a washing machine embedded inside. Bai Yu saw that he actually hid the washing machine in such a deep place. No wonder she couldn't find it when she searched the entire house. I'm sorry I didn't tell you earlier. I'm fine. Just as she was about to walk over, she suddenly thought of something. There doesn't seem to be a drying rack on your balcony. Why do you need a drying rack? I'm hanging the clothes. Bai Hao didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Otherwise, how do you dry your clothes? The clothes will dry as soon as they are taken out of the washing machine.
Ah, is that so?
It sounded like it was quite advanced. Chapter 4589. Gu Chengza said, I don't like to dry clothes on the balcony. When I bought the electrical appliances, they said that this washing machine has a disinfectant belt to dry it. You just have to fold it and put it in the closet. While he was talking, Bai Ran was silently studying how the washing machine worked. So far, Yi Yuqin had been using an old-fashioned washing machine with 2 barrels. This washing machine was a little old. According to Yi Yuqin's personality, these electrical appliances were basically not replaced unless they were broken. There was no other reason why the washing machine was especially durable. The electrical appliances at home had not been replaced for a long time. Therefore, Bai Ran had only seen this washing machine before, but she did not know how to use it. Gu Chengza saw her uneasiness and guessed that she did not know how to use it. So he thoughtfully turned on the washing machine, took the clothes from Bai Ran, and put them in. Thank you. I bought you a lot of clothes, including pajamas. Do you want to try them? Bai Ran nodded. She carried the bags into the room and saw that the tags had been removed. The packaging was also the same as the shopping malls, so she could not tell what brand it was. However, just by touching the texture of the material, she could clearly feel that the material was very good. It was very comfortable and light. This price should not be cheap. She had always been wearing clothes that were very flattering. There were many street shops near the market where she used to live. The clothes sold were at least 10 yuan and at most 100 yuan. It was very affordable. The clothes that Yi Yuqin bought for her were all bought from here. Yi Yuqin was very particular. The clothes she bought for herself were more than 200 yuan, but the clothes she bought for her were at most 100 yuan. Actually, Bai Ran understood. After all, the Zhang family was not rich. It was good enough that she did not wear other people's leftovers. She felt that Yi Yuqin had adopted her out of love and responsibility. However, slowly the responsibility became heavier. After all, it was not as simple as having an extra pair of chopsticks to feed another family. One had to know that besides studying, food and clothing, one more person would also be a big burden for a family. After Bai Ran started working, the situation improved. Yi Yuqin no longer gave her money. She even scrimped and saved to subsidize the family. Even so, Yi Yuqin was always in high spirits to go on blind dates for her. Forget it. Don't think about these things anymore. Bai Hao didn't want to recall these things. He picked up a random piece of clothing and looked at it. He was a little surprised. She originally thought that this man probably had a straight man's aesthetic, and the clothes he bought wouldn't be very nice. At most, they would be decent. However, the clothes he bought were all quite nice. She was holding an A-line dress in her hand. Slowly, she looked like a young lady. Bai Kun could not bear to part with it. It seemed that this was the most decent dress she had ever worn since she was a child. However, he must have spent a lot of money to buy so many clothes for her. Bai Chong felt guilty when he thought about it. The clothes he bought were enough to last her for a season. Bai Ran changed into the clothes. Outside the door, Gu Chengza asked softly, "Do the clothes fit?" "Yes. Come out and show me." "All right." Chapter 4590. It was a look of amazement and admiration. Gu Chengza looked her up and down and raised his eyebrows. Very beautiful. He had brought her size to buy clothes. Because he had not tried them on, he could not help but worry that the clothes he bought would not fit well, would be uncomfortable, or would not look good. "How's the fit?" "It's very tight and light. It's quite comfortable." Bai Yan carefully probed. "Is this expensive?" "It's not expensive. It was only a few thousand yuan each." However, Gu Chengza did not say anything. He knew that with Bai Yan's personality, she would probably feel bad about it. Therefore, after buying all the clothes, he specially ordered the manager to remove the tags and change the packaging so that she could not see the brand or the price. This way, she would at least feel at ease wearing it. Moreover, a few thousand yuan each was not expensive at all to Gu Chengza. Bai Yan thought that the not expensive he said was at most a few hundred yuan each. She could not help but exclaim, "A few hundred yuan can buy clothes with such good fabric. It's really affordable." Gu Chengza almost couldn't hold back his laughter. Fortunately, he did not take her to the counter this time. Otherwise, she would definitely not be willing to wear the clothes he bought for her when she saw the price tag. Bai Yan saw that his eyes were full of praise and smiled shyly.
Really?
Yes, I don't lie. This dress looks really good on you. This dress is pretty good to begin with. Gu Chengza heard this and smiled. He walked over and helped her straighten her clothes. Bai Yan only felt that once he got close, the fragrance of orchids on his body could no longer be resisted. She lowered her head slightly, not daring to let him see the blush on her face. Ever since she was young, she had never stood so intimately with anyone before. Gu Chengza helped her straighten her clothes and said, "Beautiful clothes have to be worn by the right person to show their beauty and value." The praise in his words was self-evident. Bai Yan was really a very good-looking girl. Her facial features were very gentle and delicate. There were many types of beauty. Some of them were sharp, provocative, and aggressive. Some of them were as calm as water, dull and tasteless. At first sight, one would find them breathtaking, but after looking at them for a long time, one would get bored. But Bai Ran's facial features belonged to the category that one could never get tired of looking at 100 times. Perhaps the first time he saw her, she definitely couldn't be considered a heavenly beauty. However, the more he looked at her, especially when he stared at her, the more he found her breathtaking. However, due to the environment in which she grew up, Yi Yuqin had always belittled her more than praised her, which had caused her to develop an inferiority complex. She always felt that she couldn't compare to others in any way. Gu Chengza's words seemed to hold her in his heart. "I also bought other designs. Try them on one by one, okay?" Bai Hao turned around. He suddenly recalled something and halted.
You!
"Why are you so nice to me?" When Gu Chengza heard this, he was stunned for a long while before he broke into laughter. He had only bought her a few pieces of clothing. At most, he spoke a little more gently, but it made her feel flattered. What kind of life had she lived in the past 10 years? She was so scared to accept his kindness to her. Gu Chengza asked disapprovingly, "Shouldn't I be nice to my wife?" Chapter 4591. Bai Ran returned to her room and tried on the clothes that Gu Chengza bought for her one by one. Other than the A-line dress, there were also slim-fit dresses and floral dresses. She seemed to be able to pull them off very well in different styles. Other than the fact that Bai Ran was a clothes hanger, Gu Chengza had good taste too. Her temperament was quiet and gentle, and he would choose clothes for her based on her style. These clothes were not very revealing and were not sexy. Although there were many styles, Bai Ran could always look sweet when she wore them. The more Gu Chengza looked at them, the more satisfied he was. Bai Ran counted carefully. He bought a total of 10 sets of clothes for her, and they were all full sets. "Are you going to work tomorrow?" "I'm off tomorrow." "Okay, there's no rush. Dry clean these clothes first." "Dry clean? Are you going anywhere tomorrow?" "No." "Then wear your pajamas first. Be particular for the day." The pajamas were placed in the washing machine and could be washed and dried in an hour. She could wear soft pajamas the next morning. Bai Ran was touched by his thoughtfulness and nodded. "It's late. Go to sleep." "Okay." Bai Ran took her phone charger and phone and returned to her room. Just as she laid down on the bed, Bai Ran opened WeChat and saw her best friend Mila sending her endless messages. "You're married? You're married? You're married?" Then there was a series of emojis. Bai Ran did not know whether to laugh or cry. She gave her an affirmative reply. "Yes, I'm married." In the morning, when they went to register their marriage, Bai Ran's mind was empty while waiting for the certificate. She sent a message to her best friend Mi Lu. "I'm married." After that, there was no time to reply to her. Too many things had happened today. Lying in bed, she felt exhausted. She opened WeChat and was amused by the series of funny emojis sent by Mi Lu. "Oh my God! I can't believe it! I haven't seen you for a few days. What happened? You don't even have a boyfriend. You abandoned me. Goodbye. Our friendship is over." Mila kept complaining like a machine gun, venting her dissatisfaction. The two of them had a very good relationship. Ever since they were in university, there had been a misunderstanding. No discord, no concord. Since then, their relationship had been very good. After moving to the same dormitory, they were inseparable like sisters. Although in today's society, one had to guard against fire, theft, and girlfriends seem to have gradually become a dangerous person. However, Mi Lu and Bai Kun were 100% trustworthy in each other's eyes. Mil was a solid friend. Ever since she was young, Bai Yan had always been a very insecure person. Milu had always protected her like a boyfriend. She usually had a neat short haircut, giving people a very neutral style. Milu, tell me, who was it? When I wasn't paying attention, he kidnapped my best girlfriend. Bai Yu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He called her. As soon as the call connected, Milu started wailing. Why did you abandon me to marry a man? Didn't you agree to spend the rest of your life alone? But you secretly got married. Milu, you know about my aunt, right? Milu was silent for a while and regained his serious tone. Yes, I know. She forced you to go on a blind date again? Then, her tone immediately became nervous. Could it be that you married an old man who went on blind dates? Chapter 4592. Bai Yan pondered for a while and finally told her the truth. I married this man in a fit of pique. Puffed. There was the sound of someone vomiting blood on the other end, followed by Mi Li's angry roar. Don't tell me you married someone in a fit of pique with your aunt. Do you know how hateful my aunt is? What are the conditions she set for the blind date? No matter who it is, whether bald or old, as long as he can give her a house for my cousin to marry a wife, she will agree to marry me to someone else. Mi Lu was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. Isn't this human trafficking in disguise? Yes. Bai Yan felt wronged. So, I found someone to marry. At least, I won't have to face those weird blind dates anymore. Bai Yan felt like vomiting at the mention of blind dates. Milu was dumbfounded. Is this the main point? The main point is the man you married reliable? Anyway, I think he's quite good. He knows how to respect girls and he's also very gentlemanly. Most importantly, Bai Yan recalled Gu Cheng's handsome side profile when he was sitting in the front passenger seat. Her face was burning. Most importantly, he's also very handsome. Don't be fooled by appearances. Handsome men are generally fickle. Mila paused and launched a series of attacks. What's his personality like? How's his family background? What about your parents? Did they agree to your marriage? Do you have a house? Do you have a car? Are the elders easy to get along with? Bai Hao was dumbfounded by the series of questions that came out like a cannon. She looked at the ceiling blankly and then replied in a daze, I didn't even ask. Pfft. There was the sound of someone vomiting blood again. Mi Li's hoarse voice came through the receiver. Bai Yan, can you not be so decadent? No. Milu declared strongly. As your best friend, I want to meet him. Meet? Yes. At least, I can rest assured if I approve it. But I'm already married. You can still get a divorce after you get married. It's just a marriage certificate. It won't bind you forever. Take advantage of the fact that both of you have just gotten married and don't have any children yet. Cut the Gordian knot. Milu asked again, you fell out with your aunt, where are you staying now? If you don't have anywhere to go, then come to my place. I'll take care of you. Hee. I'm staying at his house. What? An hour later, Milu rushed to the door of the apartment aggressively and pressed the bell. Just as Bai Ran opened the door, she saw that Gu Chengza had already walked out of the study. When he reached the door and opened it, Milu walked in with his phone in hand. When he saw the man, he was stunned. Oh my God! She covered her face and her eyes widened. Gu Chengza's face was full of confusion. He had no idea what was going on. Frowning, he asked, who are you looking for? Mi Li's aggressive stance instantly softened. He cleared his throat and lowered his head, not even daring to look at Gu Chengza directly. I'm looking for Bai Ran. Is she here? Milu. Chapter 4593. Bai Ran. Milu entered the door awkwardly and winked at her as she walked over. You! Gu Chengza turned around and looked at Milu, who was covering his face and did not dare to look at him directly. He was slightly suspicious. Your friend? Yeah. Then, have a seat. Although Gu Chengza was a little surprised that she had barged into their house so late at night, he still treated her as a guest. Bai Ran held her hand and smiled guiltily at Gu Chengza. She's looking for me for something urgent. Let's go into the room to talk. With that, the two of them pushed each other into the room. Gu Chengza stood there in a daze until the two of them entered the room. Then, he shook his head helplessly. In the room, Mila shook Rand's shoulder desperately. Your husband is so handsome, ah. How can he be so handsome, ah? Gu Cheng's appearance belonged to the standard idol drama style. He had fair skin, sword-like eyebrows, peach blossom eyes, and a clean temperament. On the other hand, he had the calm temperament of an old cadre. This type of man was simply an existence that killed women instantly. If your husband debuts, I'll definitely be his fan. Just a second ago, Milu was still questioning her on the phone. Now, she seemed to have become Gu Cheng's die-hard fan. Gosh, Ran, how did you find such a perfect husband? Milu was in disbelief. Then, she suddenly calmed down and thought of something. She leaned over and asked, did he say anything tonight? What did he say? It's the problem of sleeping together. You have a room to yourself? Yeah. He said that before getting my permission, he won't force me to do anything. Tisk. So pure and simple? Could it be that he has a hidden illness in that area? Ran raised her eyebrows in confusion. Hidden illness? It's that kind, Mila whispered in her ear. It's just that he can't do that and can't find a woman willing to marry him. Ran quickly covered her mouth and said, don't spout nonsense. This kind of thing is quite hurtful. Otherwise, there is another possibility. Milu asked suspiciously, could it be that his marriage to you is a marriage in name? A marriage of formality was a marriage that was only formality and had no substance. On the surface, it was a normal family consisting of a man and a woman, but in reality, the husband and wife were physically and mentally independent. Nowadays, many of the marriages of convenience were formed by people who had sex with each other. Both husband and wife maintained an unknown sexual orientation, and such an orientation could not be known by the family. After all, the general public held prejudice and malice against homosexual relationships. Some elders didn't have extreme views on homosexuality, but once it fell on their children, they couldn't accept it. Therefore, in order to appease the elders, the children adopted a formal marriage. A man who liked men and a woman who liked women rarely had the chance to successfully form a family. Therefore, at this time, gay men would casually find a passable woman to marry through blind dates. This kind of woman was also known as a co-wife. Most of the same wives didn't know that their husbands didn't like women, so they ended up as victims of marriage. Mila had to explain everything to her. Chapter 4594. That's impossible, right? Ran could not believe it. Gu Chengza looked very normal to her. She felt that marrying her did not seem like he was using her. Milu asked carefully, then why did he marry you? After Mili's question, Ran realized that marrying him was too rushed. She was completely clueless about everything about him. She could not even figure out his motive for marrying her. Love at first sight? Hearing that, Milu could not help but mock her. Ran, wake up. With his good qualities, girls who are prettier than you will definitely throw themselves at him. Ran felt wronged. What does love at first sight have to do with being pretty? The prerequisite for love at first sight is that the first person you look at is definitely someone with good looks. Even if we don't talk about family background, in most cases, looks are also one of the criteria for matching social status. It doesn't have to be too good-looking, but if it's too ugly, how can he fall in love at first sight? She made a lot of sense. Ran could not refute her. She lowered her head in defeat. Seeing that, Mila sighed helplessly. Did you get married on a whim? Did you go and register your marriage with him? Ran nodded silently. You're too muddle-headed. Marriage is a lifelong event. How can you be so casual? Mila sat down beside her and chattered on. This society is actually very unfriendly to women. Moreover, you're a divorced female celebrity. You got married in such a hurry. If you two can't get along, would you divorce so hastily? We can slowly cultivate our feelings. Slowly cultivate? Mila face-bombed. Some feelings can't be cultivated at all. Their personalities are incompatible from the beginning. No matter how you try to break in, it will be torture. She did not mean to pour cold water on Ran. However, under such circumstances, Mila had to consider the development of things from the worst perspective so that he would not be caught off guard. You didn't even discuss this with me. I'm so angry. Ran said angrily. I was wondering why my aunt kept arranging blind dates for me. I didn't think that. She was using me. I can't take it anymore. I want to be free from this sea of bitterness. So, you randomly picked a man to marry. Milu raised his eyebrows. I think he's pretty good. Although he's not rich and can't be compared to those rich merchants, he respects me and treats me like a gentleman. That's enough. Milu was helpless. Bai Yu had always been disliked by her aunt's family, so she had an inferiority complex. However, just based on his looks alone, Gu Qingze was indeed irresistible to women. Actually, marrying him isn't necessarily a bad thing. I'm just thinking about the worst. Perhaps, you two have also found true love through a freak combination of circumstances. When Bai Yu heard this, his eyes went blank. Is there really true love in this world? Yes. Mila vowed solemnly, true love is like wind and rain. What should come will still come. Ha 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 ha. Bai Yu was amused by her serious expression. Milu, thank you for rushing over. She must be worried, right? Milu also smiled and hugged her. Humph, who asked my Bai Yu to be so beautiful? I have to be on guard at all times in case she gets kidnapped. The two of them tickled each other and fell on the bed laughing. Chapter 4595. That night, Bai Ran slept soundly. In her sleep, she vaguely heard a little boy calling her name. Ran-a. Ran-a. In the dream, she vaguely saw a car. She was sitting in the back seat. Turning around, a thin figure gradually disappeared into the distance. The shouts of Ranner were also left behind by the car. Bai Ran opened her eyes abruptly and sat up in bed. She realized that the sky was already bright. She had already forgotten what she had dreamed of, but the sound of Ranner still lingered in her ears. She really couldn't remember her childhood memories clearly. She even almost forgot what her parents looked like. Time was the most powerful amnesia drug. It seemed to be able to dilute everything. She vaguely remembered that there was a boy who always liked to call her Ran. However, she couldn't even remember what his name was or his surname. Perhaps, after her parents passed away in kindergarten, she spent a long time healing herself. In the end, she realized that in order to walk out of that dark memory, she had to forget it completely. As if hypnotizing herself, Bai Ran forced herself to forget all the memories of that period. Later on, she wanted to recall what her parents looked like, but she couldn't remember. She deliberately tried to recall and tried her best to recall, but she didn't feel much. She didn't have the courage to look at the photos again. Although the old friend had passed away, the living were still alive. But the one who lived seemed to be the one in the most pain. Because of the shock of her parents' death, her grandmother was always in a daze. She had some mental problems and was a little irritable. She didn't seem to like her that much. Her grandmother actually had some patriarchal thoughts. Without her father, she had lost her mental support. After that, her grandfather and grandmother both passed away, and Bai Ran had to wander around for a long time. Now that she suddenly had a home, she felt so happy that she didn't know what to do. It wasn't that her expectations were too low, but that she couldn't imagine what her own happiness would be like. Bai Ran wrapped herself in a bathrobe and went out. She found a set of home clothes folded neatly on the sofa. The sound of frying eggs came from the kitchen. Bai Ran changed into home clothes and approached the kitchen. She saw Gu Chengze holding a frying pan and spreading the eggs evenly. You know how to cook. Hearing this, Gu Chengze turned around. Seeing that she was already awake, he smiled and said, Morning. Morning. Bai Ran walked into the kitchen and looked at the eggs in his pan. They were tender and white and looked very appetizing. Frying eggs was very simple, but to make them taste good was also a test of one's ability. This is the first time I've seen a man in an apron. Gu Chengze was wearing a white casual t-shirt, slender trousers, and an apron, but he did not look out of place at all. Instead, it gave off a very gentle feeling. Gu Chengze laughed when he heard this. Is it that rare for a man to cook? Of course it's very strange. Did your parents teach you how to cook since you were young? Gu Chengze frowned slightly. My dad said that if a man can't cook, he won't be able to get a wife. Bai Kun was dumbfounded. What happened? My aunt said that if a girl can't even cook, she won't be able to get married. What about you? Gu Chengze looked at her. Do you know how to cook? Chapter 4596. Gu Chengze felt sorry for her. That's a pity. A pity? Bai Yu was surprised. What's a pity? Gu Chengze first placed the fried egg on the plate with familiarity, then turned to look into her eyes. They looked deeply into each other's eyes. Because you won't have the chance to cook in the future. Bai Yu's heart skipped a beat. She couldn't believe it. Do you mean that I won't have to cook after I marry you?
Yes.
Oh my God. How could there be such a good thing in the world? Wasn't this the same as being a little rice worm with a peace of mind? Gu Chengze said, I've been trained to cook since I was young. If you want to cook with me, I won't be able to use my skills. Gu Chengze recalled those tough times and held his forehead silently. When he was young, Gu Chengze was the type who developed later. His IQ developed. No matter what Gu Jinglian taught him, he always acted like he didn't know anything. He really didn't know anything. Gu Jinglian and Chu Ho were anxious. They really thought that Gu Chengze was the type of boy who didn't have the talent, grades, or skills. Therefore, Gu Jinglian was afraid that Gu Chengze wouldn't be able to find a wife in the future. So he developed him into a homebody. In the end, when the two of them were worried about Gu Chengze's IQ, Gu Chengze's grades skyrocketed and he got into a key city high school. When he received the report card, Chu Ho was dumbfounded and thought that Gu Chengze had learned to cheat. Aside from his studies, Gu Chengze was a late bloomer. In terms of personality, ever since he entered junior high school, Gu Chengze seemed to have become rebellious overnight. He became rebellious and didn't like to talk to Gu Jinglian. He started to be cold. Just as Gu Jinglian was thinking about how to deal with his son's rebellious behavior, Gu Chengze became mature and steady overnight. In the end, Gu Jinglian came to a conclusion. If the child was stupid, then let him play. If the child was rebellious, then let him be rebellious as long as he didn't violate his bottom line and principles. This set of educational principles was very useful when he educated Gu Xinghan. However, it wasn't that bad. At the very least, under Uncle Fu's strict conditions, Gu Chengze's culinary skills were definitely outstanding. Gu Chengze served breakfast on the table and made a cup of milk coffee. He had a sweet taste since he was young. When he drank coffee in the morning, he would add a lot of cream and sugar. Coffee was used to refresh him, but it was too bitter for him to get used to it. Bai Hao sat in front of the table, looking at the exquisite breakfast in front of him. He didn't want to destroy it with his knife and fork. A sandwich, a simple dish, a glass of milk, some porridge, and some side dishes. This was in line with the nutritional requirements for breakfast. Moreover, it looked appetizing. Gu Chengze asked, What do you want to eat tonight? Oh. What can you do? I can do anything. You're lying. Bai Chong did not believe him. There were so many delicacies in the world. How could he know everything? Of course I'm lying to you. How can I be omnipotent? Gu Chengze smiled deeply. But even if I don't know how, I can learn how to eat it if you want. Bai Ran sucked on the spoon and suddenly thought of something. I like tomato and egg drop soup. Gu Chengze. So simple? He could make this soup with his eyes closed. Your requirements are so low. Chapter 4597. She was satisfied with tomato and egg drop soup? What a glutton. Gu Chengze said to her, Tonight, I'll make tomato and egg drop soup, then stir-fry some water spinach, braised chicken wings and sweet and sour pork ribs, okay?
Yeah, okay.
Bai Ran silently took a bite of the poached egg. She was so happy that it almost overflowed. Was this the feeling of home? It had been a long time since she felt this warm. She remembered that the happiest period of her life was probably when she was studying. At that time, it was a boarding school system and she was in school every week. She didn't like to go home because her aunt would scold her when she got home. When she was in university, she rarely asked her aunt for money. Other than tuition fees, she did her best to earn money for her living expenses. She even paid for part of her tuition fees. From that moment on, she understood that she was different from others. Other classmates had parents to rely on, but she didn't. She couldn't act spoiled without restraint. From then on, she forced herself to be independent as soon as possible. She was afraid of the day when she would be kicked out of the house. Because when she was young, whenever she made her aunt unhappy, she would always say, "This is my house. If you have any backbone, get out." These words were especially hurtful. The hurt was always imprinted in her heart and could not be erased. Therefore, she did not have a sense of security since she was young. Gu Chengze saw that she had a lot on her mind. Initially, There was a touch of gentleness between his brows, but for some reason, the more he thought about it, the more he seemed to have something on his mind. Byran came back to her senses and smiled.
Nothing. I was distracted just now.
She didn't dare to tell him what was on her mind. People always said that girls should be reserved and not show off too much. Gu Chengzi said, I have to go to work later. You rest well at home, okay?
Okay.
I'll leave this address on the cupboard. If you need anything, you can call me. Gu Chengzi suddenly thought of something and asked, What did your aunt say?
Ha!
Byran was in a daze for a moment.
She already kicked me out.
Gu Chengzi heard this and nodded. That place wasn't your home in the first place.
Why did she kick you out?
Byran was stunned. From yesterday onwards, this is your home. Don't make things too awkward with your aunt. Of course, if she knows what's good for her, she won't make things too awkward. Bai Hao suddenly thought of something and asked carefully, Should I visit your parents? She finally gathered her courage. She hadn't dared to ask before because she was worried that he might not have parents or come from a divorced family. Or some other unforeseen event. Wouldn't it be too presumptuous? However, he didn't bring it up. After all, Gu Chengzi had already visited her aunt. It was etiquette to visit both parents. Etiquette was important in everything. Hearing this, Gu Chengzi raised his eyebrows slightly. I was worried that you weren't mentally prepared.
Mentally prepared?
You really won't regret marrying me? Gu Chengzi continued, Once you meet my parents, you may not have the chance to withdraw from this marriage anymore. There was no concept of divorce in the Gu family. They were all very traditional in their bones.
Chapter 4598.
Gu Chengzi's words were very gentle, but the meaning he wanted to express was very rough. There was no concept of divorce in the Gu family. Especially after meeting the parents, there was no reason for him to withdraw.
Was this a family rule? How domineering.
Marriage was so open now. Free love, free marriage, and of course the freedom to divorce. It was not that she thought divorce was normal, but she was not sure how far her marriage with Gu Chengzi would go. Who could guarantee that nothing would go wrong in their lifetime? Gu Chengzi saw that she was silent and smiled. Don't be nervous and don't misunderstand. I didn't bring you to meet my parents because they couldn't accept our divorce if they knew that we were married. I'm afraid that they would be sad if you don't want me anymore. Why was such an outstanding and dazzling man acting so innocent and pitiful in front of her?
What do you mean I don't want you anymore? You're so outstanding.
She still felt that she was not good enough for him. Gu Chengzi smiled and patted her head gently.
I'm joking.
He walked to Byran and squatted down beside her. He held her face gently and said gently, Now let's try our marriage first.
I'll try my best to be a good husband.
If we get along well and are mentally prepared, I'll bring you to meet my parents, okay? Byran smiled and nodded. Gu Chengzi walked to the door. Byran walked to the entrance and quietly passed his suit jacket to him. Just as he picked up the tie, Byran suddenly stared at the tie in his hand and said quietly,
Do you want me to help you with your tie?
Ha! Gu Chengzi opened his palm. Do you know how to?
Yes.
In the past, I used to work in a clothing store and learned a little. Bai Yu felt that it was a very interesting thing to fight for her husband's territory. She remembered that in her psychology class, the tutor also said that this kind of behavior could improve chemistry. It was Byran's first time tying a tie for a man. She was so nervous that her hands were trembling. Gu Chengzi looked at her slightly trembling hands and wanted to laugh, but he held it in. He pretended to look at her casually, but he saw that she was nervous and serious about tying his tie for him. However, perhaps because she was too nervous, she made a mistake the first time. Don't be nervous. Gu Chengzi suddenly raised his hand and held her hand to tie his tie properly.
Do you know how to tie it like this?
Bai Hao chuckled in annoyance.
I used to know it.
Maybe. It's been too long since I last fought, so I forgot. Don't worry. You'll be good at tying my tie every morning. When he said this, Bai Yu's face turned even redder, as if she had been dyed with high-quality rouge. The more Gu Chengzi looked at her, the more he liked her. He couldn't help but lower his head and peck her cheek lightly. I'm going to work. Bai Hao lowered his head and said timidly, Be careful on the road.
Yes.
Gu Chengzi smiled at her and left. For some reason, this devilish smile made Bai Kun a little absent-minded. She stood at the door in a daze for a long time. It was only when she saw Gu Chengza enter the elevator that she came back to her senses and closed the door. With her back against the door, she was still in a daze. This kind of life had only existed in her imagination. She had never imagined that it would become reality. He had a home. Chapter 4599. For the entire day, Bai Ran felt like she was floating in the air. As she walked, she felt like she could fly. She then realized that she was already married and had a husband named Gu Chengza. She had been promoted to Mrs. Gu, and her mood was even better. Since she had nothing to do at home, Bai Ran familiarized herself with the appliances in the house. Then, she began to clean the house. The house was not big, but she had to clean it every day to keep it clean. Especially when the windows were open, dust would accumulate in the corners if they were not cleaned for a day. She spent the whole morning cleaning the house. In the afternoon, the nanny came with the groceries. When she saw that the house was clean, she was so shocked that she thought she had entered the wrong house. It could not be. She did not enter the wrong house. But why was the house so clean? Although she cleaned it every day, there was a big difference between cleaning and not cleaning. She could tell at a glance that the house had been carefully cleaned. Bai Ran heard the door open and came out of the kitchen. When she saw the nanny, she was shocked. "You are." When the nanny saw her, her face turned pale. "Oh my God. Since when was there another person in the house?" "You are." "I." When Bai Ran saw a stranger, she felt uneasy. She smiled and introduced herself. "I'm Bai Ran, Gu Chengza's wife." Wife? Young Master Gu was married? Oh my God, this was big news. The nanny called Gu Chengza in surprise. Gu Chengza had just left a company meeting when he received the nanny's call. Only then did he realize that he had forgotten to greet her. When he answered the call, the nanny's surprised voice came from the other end. "Young Master Gu, you're married?" "Yeah." Gu Chengza frowned, feeling a headache coming on. "I forgot to tell you. Are you home now?" "Yeah." When I opened the door, I saw that Mrs. Gu had cleaned the house. I thought I entered the wrong house. Does Master know about this?" "Don't tell my father for now." "Why?" "In short, you just have to do as I tell you to. Also, you don't have to cook anymore." When the nanny heard this, she was even more surprised. "Why?" "Because I'll cook from now on." When the nanny heard that, she was dumbfounded. She knew that Gu Chengza could cook. But because of his busy schedule, well, it was mostly because he was too lazy. Usually, other than cleaning, she would prepare 3 dishes and a soup before Gu Chengza returned. If Gu Chengza had social engagements, he would inform her in advance. However, Gu Chengza was an extremely disciplined man. If there was no need to socialize, he would rarely show himself. Important social gatherings usually ended early. Most of the social gatherings were for business, so when he came back, he would still feel hungry. Therefore, she would still prepare a meal and heat it up for him to eat when he got home. However, she was surprised when he said that he would cook for himself. Gu Chengza gave a few more instructions before hanging up. Bai Hao stood aside with his hands clasped behind his back. He asked carefully, "How should I address you?" "Oh, I forgot to introduce myself. I'm the nanny of this house. My surname is Su. You can call me Auntie Su like Chengza." Chapter 4600. Auntie Su. "Hey, good girl." Auntie Su's face was glowing as she nodded happily. Bai Ran immediately returned to her room. Just as Auntie Su was feeling puzzled, Bai Ran ran out with a notebook and approached her. "Auntie Su, can I ask you a few questions?" Go ahead." What kind of fruit does Chengza like to eat the most?" Auntie Su was Gu Chengza's personal nanny and was responsible for taking care of his daily needs. She should know a lot about his preferences, right? Auntie Su was stunned. After thinking for a long time, she said quietly, "Chengza doesn't seem to be a picky eater." "Not a picky eater?" "Yes, whether it's fruit, vegetables or meat, he basically doesn't refuse anything." "Doesn't refuse anything?" Then, there should be something he especially likes. This question was difficult for Auntie Su to answer. This favorite, how should I put it? She couldn't tell. Every time she brought back some fruit, Gu Chengza would wash it clean and eat it. No matter what fruit he ate, he wouldn't show any signs of liking it, and he wouldn't look like it tasted bad either. He would just eat it calmly. No matter what dish she made, other than the difference in saltiness, vegetables, and even something as disgusting as bitter gourd, he would eat it without a frown.
It's true that he especially likes cleanliness, Auntie Sue said. So, I basically don't have to worry about what he eats every day. The only thing I have to do is to clean the house. He's especially picky when it comes to hygiene.
Byran looked around and asked tentatively, "So did my cleaning today pass?"
Auntie Sue casually wiped the table and saw that there was still dust.
However, Byran was so enthusiastic about cleaning that she was embarrassed to say it.
She only said, "In the future, leave the cleaning to me." Basically, when I came here, all of you had gone to work. When I came back, the house was clean and bright. But you have things to do at home too. You can't come every day.
Auntie Sue heard and smiled.
Don't worry. If I'm not free, someone else will take over my job.
Byran was relieved when she heard that.
That night, Gu Chungza came home very early.
Coincidentally, the new clothes that Gu Chungza had bought for her had also been dry cleaned and sent over. When Gu Chungza returned home, Byran was sitting on the sofa eating grapes. Seeing that he had returned, she immediately stood up from the sofa. However, she did not know what to do and just stood there stupidly.
Gu Chungza didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Why are you standing up?
Byran was so nervous that he blurted out, "Welcome you." Gu Chungza was amused by her.
He stood at the entrance without moving.
Suddenly, he opened his arms and asked tentatively, "Then, do you want to give your husband a warm hug when he comes home from work?"
These words finally woke her up. Bai Hao put down the plate of fruits and walked toward him. When she was in front of him, she lowered her head and hugged him. She blushed. Obviously, she was shy. He liked her shyness. He especially liked her blushing cheeks when she was shy. He really could not get tired of looking at her.
Gu Chungza hugged her gently but couldn't bear to let go no matter what. The two of them were really like newlyweds. They stood at the entrance for a long time until Bai Yan urged him and said, "I feel like my arm is going to be stiff."
Chapter 46:01. Gu Chungza walked to the kitchen.
In the afternoon, he had asked Auntie Sue to buy tomatoes and eggs. These were the main ingredients because Byran specifically mentioned that she liked them. He calmly put on an apron and quietly washed the vegetables one by one. Byran had seen many people cook, and the one who left the deepest impression on her was her aunt, Yi Yuqin. The small kitchen was always filled with oil and smoke. Yi Yuqin was a person with a lot of negative energy. Her uncle was not career-minded, and the family was living a tight life, very cramped. Every time she cooked, she could hear her nagging as she cut the vegetables in the kitchen. She was either complaining that her uncle's salary was not enough to cover the expenses, or complaining about how much money her neighbor had lost playing mahjong. That endless nagging, coupled with the sound of cutting vegetables, always made people feel inexplicably irritated. However, watching Gu Chungza cook was a kind of enjoyment. Every movement of his was so graceful and free, giving off a feeling of carelessness. Although his movements were neither fast nor slow, they were methodical. Even when he was cutting vegetables, his back was still very straight. One could not help but wonder if he was from the military. Otherwise, how could he have such good manners? Gu Chungza could still care about her as he cut the vegetables.
Why are you standing at the door? Not watching TV? Watching and learning.
Byran smiled and refused to leave. This was because watching him cook seemed to be a kind of visual enjoyment. After the vegetables were cut, they were smoothly placed into the pot. Gu Chungza held the handle of the knife and started to stir fry. From the angle of the door, looking at him from the side, he was elegant, confident, handsome, and dashing. Byran felt that being able to marry such a man, although a little muddle-headed, was like a pie falling from the sky.
All of a sudden, she felt a little dejected.
She had a feeling that this man was really outstanding. Compared to herself, he suddenly paled in comparison. Nowadays, relationships were about matching in social status. This was what she concluded from her blind dates. The conditions were like an equivalent exchange. Although Gu Chungza married her and did not care so much, she still felt that there was a big gap between the two of them in terms of ability. This kind of man had an excellent job, an excellent character, and most importantly, housework was a piece of cake. Compared to herself, Byran lowered her head in shame.
No, she also had to learn how to cook.
Byran walked to his side and said with a smile,
Mr. Gu, can you teach me how to cook? Gu Chengze suddenly turned his head and looked at her meaningfully. Bai Yan felt guilty under his stare. She pinched the corner of her clothes and said nervously, Although I'm a little stupid, I'll definitely learn it after a few more times. Gu Chengze suddenly said, Isn't it time to change the way you address me? Since we're married, why are you still calling me Mr. Gu? Then, Bai Ran asked tentatively, Chengze. Gu Chengze closed the lid and looked at the sky helplessly. He turned around and leaned against the table with his arms crossed. Mrs. Gu, you should call me hubby, not Chengze. This was how the elders of the Gu family addressed him. It sounded very serious. Ugh! Bai Yu blushed. When they were in university, many campus couples would call each other husband and wife when they started dating. She felt that it was ridiculous. She felt that since they were not married yet, they should not address each other so casually. But now that they were married... Chapter 4602. Old. Gu Chengze looked at her patiently, quietly waiting for her to call him. However, with Bai Ran's shy personality, she could not complete the word old after a long time. Gu Chengze suddenly walked in front of her and forced her into a corner. When Bai Ran realized what was happening, she had nowhere to go. Is this word so difficult to pronounce? Gu Chengze looked at her with a helpless expression. His handsome eyes even had a hint of indulgence. Come, repeat after me, hubby. Old. Bai Hao tried his best to say another word, but he couldn't say another word. When Gu Chengze saw this, his lips curled into a smile. Taking advantage of her annoyance, he suddenly bent down and pecked her on the lips. A brief kiss had almost taken away all of her dead ends. Bai Ran widened her eyes and looked at him in a daze. She did not expect this man to be so evil and take away her first kiss. That was her first kiss. The first kiss she imagined was much more romantic than this. In the end, he snatched away her first kiss in the kitchen? This is punishment. Gu Chengze emphasized. He stretched his arms and controlled her in this small space. He continued to threaten and tempt her. You can't even pronounce such a simple word properly. I'll continue to punish you. He was not afraid that she would be angry. This woman had a soft and cute personality. She was really easy to bully. Men naturally had no resistance against this type of woman. Especially this woman, who was Bai Ran. The more Gu Chengze looked at her pink cheeks, the more he liked them. However, he had to control himself and patiently wait for her to call him hubby. Bai Ran's mind was in a mess. Other than when she was a little smarter when she was studying, she had never even held hands with a boy, let alone kissing or hugging. This man seemed to have taken care of many of her firsts. Why, you still don't know how? Gu Chengze pondered for a moment. Or are you looking forward to my punishment? No. Bai Ran's face turned even redder, as if blood could drip out. I'm not used to it yet. Everything else can be discussed. This is the principle. There's no room for discussion. In other respects, he would not force her. However, since they were already married, if this stupid woman continued to call him Mr. Gu or Chengze, he would not know whether to laugh or cry. Good girl, call me hubby. He continued to guide her patiently. That pair of soul-stirring eyes were fixed on her body just like that. Bai Ran's tongue seemed to be tied up. He stuttered, "I" for a long time, but he still couldn't force out the two words that Gu Chengze wanted to hear. Gu Chengze lowered his head again and kissed her unexpectedly. Bai Ran was so angry that she laughed and could not help but punch him. Gu Chengze raised his hand and effortlessly wrapped it around her wrist. Good wife. He hugged her as if he was hugging a large teddy bear. He walked casually to the gas stove and turned off the fire the moment the pot lid jumped. His control of the fire was so precise. It was the same for her. Chapter 4603. Gu Chengze said playfully, Mrs. Gu, why is your face so hot? Hubby. While he was still talking, Bai Ran quickly called out the two words. Then, she broke free from him and ran out of the kitchen. Gu Chengze froze on the spot until he realized that this little girl had called him hubby when he wasn't paying attention. He couldn't help but laugh. Why was she so easily embarrassed? She was just like when she was young. Gu Chengze touched the corner of his mouth gently. He still wanted more from kissing her just now. He gently pinched the lid and opened it. The aroma wafted out. Gu Chengza smiled satisfactorily and served the sweet and sour pork ribs. Bai Ran didn't know how she finished her dinner. The tomato egg soup she was looking forward to seemed tasteless. Her mind was filled with the image of Gu Chengza kissing her. That was her first kiss. However, in her mind, her other self seemed to be saying, "Isn't keeping your first kiss for your hubby?" However, the total number of days she had known Gu Chengza was less than a week. It was inevitable that she was caught off guard by how fast things were progressing. Gu Chengza saw that she was in a daze and was a little nervous. "Is it not good?" "No." Bai Ran immediately came back to her senses. "It's very good." Gu Chengza heaved a sigh of relief. He was actually very confident in his cooking, but he was especially concerned about her opinion. If she said it was not good, then it would be meaningless no matter how good other people said it was. Gu Chengza asked, "What time are you going to work tomorrow?" "Oh." After he reminded her, Bai Ran remembered that the design draft she had to hand in tomorrow was not ready yet. "What's wrong?" "I didn't do my homework." "Homework?" Gu Chengza almost laughed. "You still have to do homework when you're working?" "Yeah, the design draft is homework." "I forgot." Too many things had happened recently. So much so that she almost forgot about work. "Do you have to do it?" "Tomorrow." "Yeah, I have to do it. My supervisor is very strict. Especially, I'm new. If I don't work hard, I'll be criticized." Bai Ran paused and said, "It's okay. It's very simple. I can design it tonight." Gu Chengza returned to the previous topic. "What time are you going to work tomorrow?" "Yeah. We all go to work at 9:30. I'll send you to the company." "No need. It's convenient for me to take the subway." Gu Chengza said, "I'm worried." Just as well. I'll send you to your company and get your company's address." Moreover, as a husband, it's his duty to send his wife to work. Unable to dissuade him, Bai Ran could only bite the bullet and say, "Thank you." "If you drive me, will you be late for work?" "I won't." "Then I'll wake up earlier tomorrow." Gu Chengza's heart ached a little. "Didn't you have to rush out the design drafts today? Shouldn't you sleep early?" "We'll make it in time, don't worry." After dinner, Bai Ran offered to wash the dishes, but Gu Chengza couldn't bear to do that. He chased her back to her room and told her to finish the design draft as soon as possible. Bai Kong returned to the room. The theme this time is The Wedding of Dreams. The company was collaborating with a bridal gown company to design a new bridal gown. Chapter 4604. The Wedding of Her Dreams. For some reason, Bai Yan suddenly imagined the scene of her and Gu Chengza's wedding. She blushed and lowered her head. She suddenly had an inspiration. First, she made a draft on paper, then scanned it into the computer. She used the tablet to add the details. A digital tablet was probably the most valuable possession a person had in their 20 years of life. Back when she was learning to draw and design, a digital tablet was a luxury to her. Yi Yuqin did not have much spare money. She raised a son and would never buy anything for her. She lived frugally and worked part-time. Finally, she became the last student in the design department to own a tablet. Even though the digital tablet she bought at that time was a little outdated now, she still loved it so much that she couldn't put it down and had been carefully protecting it. Her drawing skills were especially solid. Many people needed to make a very detailed draft before they could use the tablet. If she had the leisure to do so, she could have just used a digital tablet to do it. In less than half an hour, the outline of the wedding dress finally took shape. Bai Yan stretched and glanced at the door. Gu Chengza silently leaned against the door. She did not know how long he had been standing there. "You!" Her lazy waist froze in mid-air. Gu Chengza laughed. "Are you done?" "Yes. Almost done. There's still one more detail." Gu Chengza walked over, but Bai Yan hugged the laptop screen in a panic and did not want to show it to him. "No peeking." Gu Chengza raised his eyebrows. "What is it? So mysterious?" "The design draft." "Is this a trade secret? So it could not be revealed to outsiders?" Gu Chengza understood it this way. Actually, that was not it. It was just that Bai Yan was a little shy to show him the wedding dress of her dreams. She felt inexplicably guilty. It was like a young girl in love being peeked at. Gu Chengza patted her head. Okay. I won't peek."
He turned around and walked out of the door.
Are you relieved now?
Bai Yan let go of the laptop.
No peeking.
Okay. Gu Chengze turned around and asked, finish work early, shower and sleep, okay? Then, what about you? Gu Chengze said matter-of-factly, I'll wait for you in the living room.
Waiting for me?
Bai Ran hurriedly said, go to bed early.
You still have work tomorrow.
Since you're not sleeping, I can't sleep either.
His warmth warmed Bai Hao's heart.
She nodded and promised, okay.
Wait for me for a while. I'll be quick. Gu Chengze closed the door.
Bai Zhe hurriedly picked up the tablet and crazily attacked.
When she worked, she was a workaholic. It wasn't that she loved her work, but that she loved designing. When she was young, she had suffered a lot, so she didn't like to talk. Her biggest interest was to hold a drawing board and copy the beautiful girls in comic books. At first, there was no condition to buy drawing paper. She drew with a pencil in the unused part of the abandoned exercise book. At that time, she was still in university. However, her homeroom teacher liked her very much. She accidentally saw her drawing in her spare time. She even drew very well. Even though she didn't have a decent drawing board, she knew about her family's situation. Thus, she bought her drawing paper and a pen as a birthday gift.
Chapter 4605. Perhaps because someone was waiting for her, Bai Yan was even more efficient. She finished all the details in no time. This design draft had been brewing in her mind for a long time. Now, she was just reverting the thoughts in her head to the design draft. It was a piece of cake for her. Therefore, Bai Yan finished it very quickly. When she closed the notebook, the clock was already past 10 o'clock. It was already so late. Bai Yan walked out of the room in annoyance. However, she saw Gu Chengze sitting on the sofa, still waiting for her silently. She felt especially embarrassed. Bai Yan walked over guiltily. Gu Chengze heard her footsteps and looked up. When he saw her, he smiled. Are you done?
Yeah.
Then do you want to shower first or should I? Or, Gu Chengze said meaningfully, let's shower together. Shower together. These 3 words made Bai Yan's face turn red like a crab in a steamer.
You shower first.
Yeah. Gu Chengze was a little disappointed.
There's such a big bathtub at home. Can't we shower together?
You shower first. Bai Yan couldn't think of anything else to say. Gu Chengze stopped teasing her and patted her head.
Then I'll go shower first.
Bai Yan walked stiffly to the sofa and sat down. She picked up the remote control and wanted to turn on the television. However, she didn't want to watch the television at all. Instead, her mind was filled with Gu Chengze's ambiguous words.
Ah, so shy.
She covered her face in annoyance when she recalled how he had asked her to call him hubby, word by word in the kitchen, and kissed her as punishment. Half an hour later, Gu Chengze walked out of the bathroom and saw Bai Yan still holding the remote control. Her thumb was aimlessly pressing buttons. However, the remote control was upside down and the television wasn't turned on. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He crossed his arms and said, Your turn. Bai Yan lowered her head and stood up. She walked in the direction of the bathroom. Gu Chengze's body moved slightly. She only paid attention to the path under her feet and didn't look up at all. She bumped into his chest. Ugh. She pretended to be in pain and touched her forehead. When she looked up, she saw Gu Chengze looking at her with a smile. Something on your mind? No. Bai Ran didn't dare to look him in the eye, especially when Gu Chengze was wearing a bathrobe that revealed half of his well-defined chest. She didn't dare to look at him directly. She covered her eyes and went into the bathroom. Just as she closed the door, Gu Chengze turned sideways and asked, Did you bring a towel and a set of clothes? Patter. The door opened again, and Bai Yun came out with her eyes closed. She took a change of clothes and a towel from the drying rack and went back into the bathroom. She's so stupid and shy, but she's so cute. Gu Chengze shook his head. He walked to the entrance and brought the brand new bag he had bought for her into the room. When he passed by the laptop, he caught a glimpse of the design drawing on the screen. Although it was wrong to peek, and she really didn't want him to see, it shouldn't be a problem to just take a look, right? Thinking of this, Gu Chengze slowly walked in front of the computer. With just one look, he could not help but be amazed. Was this the wedding dress she designed? She saw the theme at the bottom right corner. Dream Wedding.
It seemed that her design theme this time was related to the wedding. Chapter 4606. Marriage was a sacred thing to begin with, and the wedding dress symbolized holiness and beauty. Gu Chengze did not look at it carefully.
She seemed to be keeping it a secret, so he only took a cursory glance and did not look at it further.
He walked out of the room, and not long after, Bai Ran was done. She did not go out for the whole day, so she did not take long to wash. When Bai Ran finished drying her hair and walked out of the bathroom, Gu Chengze was standing on the balcony, enjoying the night view and drinking something. Coffee. He was about to fall asleep, but he was still drinking coffee? Bai Ran thought as she walked over and asked, "Are you drinking coffee?" Milk. Gu Chengze said, "A cup of coffee in the morning helps with work, and a cup of milk in the evening helps with sleep." His habit was to have a cup of coffee in the morning and a cup of milk in the evening. It was essential. When Bai Ran heard this, she could not help but burst out laughing. "What's wrong? Then do you add wolfberry to your cola?" Gu Chengze heard this and did not react for a moment. "Why wolfberry?"
"To nourish my health."
Gu Chengze finally understood what she was trying to say.
Bai Ran said quietly, "You're too nourishing. You're so young, but you're living such a nourishing life. The people I know who are as old as you are, this is the beginning of the nightlife. Right now, I'm afraid they're drinking beer on a bar street." Gu Chengze could not help but protest, "I'm the same age as you." "The same age? Ha! Didn't you see the date on the marriage certificate?" Bai Ran looked confused. "I was so focused on the photo that I forgot to look at the date. You don't even care about your husband's birthday." Bai Ran was still in disbelief. "Are you the same age as me?" Gu Chengze could not help but feel sad at her suspicion.
"Do I look old?"
"Not really." Bai Ran leaned against the window and said quietly, "Don't they say that men mature later than women?"
"You look too mature. I'm not talking about your looks. I'm talking about your temperament and the way you conduct yourself. You always give people the feeling that you're old." "Acting like an old man?" Gu Chengze's gaze could not help but drift away. He was brought up by Gu Jinglian.
Gu Jinglian always spoke like an old man, and as he followed him, the way he spoke gradually became more mature.
"Maybe it's because of Dad's influence." "Is your father very mature?"
"No." Gu Chengze replied in all seriousness, "He's already very old."
Bai Zhe was speechless. Far away in the Gu family's residence, Gu Jinglian was practicing calligraphy when he suddenly sneezed violently. The last stroke was suddenly crooked, ruining the entire painting. Why did he sneeze for no reason? Was someone talking bad about him behind his back? "You should be the same age as me this year."
"How old is your father?"
"Around 40. What about 40-something?" "I don't remember the details." Gu Chengze often forgot his own birthday.
Bai Ran suddenly became curious. "What kind of person is your father?"
At the mention of Gu Jinglian, Gu Chengze suddenly looked disgusted.
"He's a very fierce person."
"Fierce?"
The image of a middle-aged version of Gu Chengze bearing his fangs and brandishing his claws instantly appeared in Bai Ran's mind.
Chapter 4607.
Then, Bai Ran was even more curious now.
"Does your father look like you? Is he as good-looking as you?" Gu Chengze thought for a while and suddenly looked a little uneasy.
Bai Ran saw this and was a little surprised.
"What's wrong? I feel like I'm the least attractive one in my family."
Bai Ran almost spat out a mouthful of blood.
She was really agitated.
Oh my God! In her eyes, Gu Chengze was already one of the most handsome men in the world. At least, she had never seen a man more handsome than Gu Chengze since she was young, including on television. Yet, Gu Chengze said that his looks were the worst in the Gu family.
"You mean, you're the ugliest in your family?"
"No." Gu Chengze crossed his arms. "My brother is not as handsome as me.
He's below me." The brother he was talking about was Gu Linshi. However, this point was debatable. At home, Chu Ho thought that Gu Linshi was more handsome than Gu Chengze, but Gu Chengze thought that he was more handsome than Gu Linshi. Bai Ran was very curious about his family. "It's late. Go to bed early." Gu Chengze finished his milk and urged her to go back to her room to rest. The next day, Bai Ran had the habit of waking up early. After brushing her teeth, she realized that there was an elliptical machine on the balcony. The elliptical machine was used for fitness. It was a type of aerobic exercise. Among all the fitness machines, the elliptical machine was the one that caused the least damage to the knees. She did some preparatory exercises and exercised on the elliptical machine for a while. Early in the morning, exercise was the beginning of a day full of energy. Byran had the habit of running in the morning. However, with the elliptical machine, she could finish her morning exercise on the balcony. Gu Chengze woke up later than her. After washing up, he sent her to the office. Byran opened the door and was about to rush in when Gu Chengze suddenly called out to her. "Wait." Byran turned around in confusion. She did not know what he wanted to say. "What's the matter?" "I'm going to be late. Come here." He hooked his finger at her. Byran walked over curiously. Gu Chengze suddenly reached out and hugged the back of her neck. "Don't you have anything to say to me?" Byran took a long time to react before she muttered, "Hubby, I'm going to work." And? What else?" Bai Hao looked confused. Gu Chengze reached out his finger and lightly poked his own face as a reminder. Byran finally reacted. After hesitating for a long time, Gu Chengze couldn't help but say, "If you delay any longer, you will be late." Bai Yu leaned over and kissed him gently on the cheek. Then, he turned around and ran away. Hearing this, Gu Chengze smiled and drove away in his phaeton. A few colleagues who were standing at the entrance of the company witnessed everything. They saw Byran getting out of a phaeton and kissing the man again. The two of them seemed to be very intimate. What was the relationship between the two of them? All of a sudden, speculations about whether Byran was in a relationship quickly spread throughout the morning meeting. Ever since Byran entered the company, he had gained some fame. Other than being one of the best among the newcomers, her strength and design skills were outstanding, and because of her extraordinary temperament and appearance, she had attracted the attention of many male colleagues. Chapter 4608. All the male colleagues in the department believed her words. It was understandable that a student who had just graduated had not experienced the first awakening of love. Moreover, Byran looked like an innocent little girl. Everyone secretly expressed their goodwill and waited for Byran to change her mind. In the end, the news from this morning's meeting shocked many of the male compatriots who were secretly in love with Byran. They all went to Byran to verify it. Finally, Byran could not resist the questions and said to her colleagues, "I'm married." What? Today's doubts were like a stormy sea. Many male colleagues could not believe it. The female colleagues expressed their disdain. A female colleague sitting next to her said disapprovingly, "Weren't you still single a while ago?" "Well, I think it's a flash marriage between him and me. We just registered our marriage." Flash marriage. Everyone in the department was greatly affected by this. Many colleagues who had seen Gu Chengze with their own eyes started to gossip. "I saw it this morning. Byran's husband is really handsome. He's so popular on TV. Not only is he handsome, but most importantly, he's so gentle to Byran." These were all words of envy that had no ill intentions. However, gradually, discordant voices of doubt emerged. "Byran, you just graduated and you're in such a hurry to get married. Flash marriage. Do you know your current marriage partner?" Byran answered patiently. "He's quite a good person. He takes good care of me and dotes on me." You can't tell when you just got married. There's still a honeymoon period and a break-in period when you just started dating. There's still a 3-year itch and a 7-year itch when you get married. In the beginning, it's always full of passion. Later on, without a foundation of feelings, it's difficult to maintain the marriage. That's right. Byran, you're too impulsive. Aya, I see that your hand is bare. Where's your wedding ring? Byran looked at her bare hand and said, "Oh, we haven't had a wedding yet." You haven't had a wedding? Have you only registered your marriage? Byran nodded. Someone else asked, "What about the engagement party? Has the engagement party been held?" No. We only registered our marriage first. For now, we're living together. As for the wedding, we have to think about it. As soon as Byran finished speaking, a female colleague immediately ridiculed him. Among them, a gorgeously dressed woman named Su Xiaoxiao, who was sitting behind her, smiled coldly. A flash marriage is very dangerous. By how, you have to think clearly. Whether you can afford a wedding and whether you want to have one or not are two different things.
However, a man who has money but is unwilling to hold a wedding, and a man who doesn't have money and can't afford a wedding. No matter what, I don't want these two kinds of men. In other words, Gu Chengze did not hold a wedding. Either he could not afford it or he was unwilling to. At that time, you'll be the one at a disadvantage. After all, it doesn't matter if a man gets divorced once, but once a woman gets divorced, her value will immediately depreciate. Bai Hao didn't agree. Aren't you being too serious? The wedding is not the only benchmark to measure the happiness of a marriage. It's just a formality. Chapter 4609. Even if he doesn't have a wedding, he should at least buy you a ring. A few female colleagues came over in confusion. Bai Ran, did you meet a marriage scammer? What does your husband do? Bai Ran replied, he's just an ordinary white-collar worker. An ordinary white-collar worker. One of the male colleagues who had studied cars disagreed. Impossible. Can an ordinary white-collar worker afford a phaeton? A phaeton? Many of the female colleagues in the office had never heard of this car. The male colleagues were different. Many men liked to study cars, but women's understanding of cars was limited. Just like how men only knew Chanel Gucci but rarely Radish, women only knew Porsche and Mercedes-Benz but did not know what a phaeton was. Bai Ran was also at a loss. A phaeton? Yes, a phaeton is a high-end car under Volkswagen. I'm not afraid of Mercedes-Benz and Land Rover, but I'm afraid of Volkswagen. TSK. Many of the female colleagues secretly pouted. They thought it was a powerful car, but it turned out to be a Volkswagen brand? For them, most of Volkswagen's cars were taxis, so they had a cheap impression of Volkswagen. Su Xiaoxiao did not know much about cars and could not help but ask, aren't Volkswagen's cars very low class? Even if a phaeton is a high-end car under Volkswagen, it can't compare to a BMW or Mercedes-Benz. The male colleague immediately said, a phaeton is really not comparable to an ordinary BMW or Mercedes-Benz. The female colleagues immediately jeered in disbelief. Mercedes-Benz. How can a Volkswagen compare to a Mercedes-Benz? You women say that we men don't know about lipstick, but you know more about cars than we do. A phaeton's top model costs more than 2.5 million, and a phaeton costs 2.7 million. The W12's engine is 6.0T. If I drive this car for a month, my monthly salary won't be enough to pay for the gas. When I went to a class reunion, one of my seniors said that he once drove a phaeton like a Passat, and he lost hundreds of thousands because of a bumper. A Volkswagen of 2.7 million. This was an eye-opener for many people. Many men were very surprised. They only knew that phaeton was a high-end brand under the Volkswagen brand, but they did not know that the top-of-the-line model was so expensive. Bai Ran was also stunned when she heard this. In her impression, Gu Chengze was just an ordinary office worker. When he drove a Volkswagen, she also thought that it would cost at most a few $100,000. She did not expect his car to be so expensive. Speaking of which, the interior of this car was also very luxurious. Thinking about it this way, it was very reasonable. However, it was true that Gu Chengze had never mentioned his family background to her, and she didn't pay much attention to it either. Bai Yan, is that true? Is the phaeton that you're selling really popular? I don't know much about cars. I only know that his car is a Volkswagen. I don't know if it's a phaeton or if it costs more than 2 million yuan. I don't know, and I'm not interested in it. Anyway, I'm marrying him, not his car. Please, you should at least check out the background of the man you're marrying. If the man you marry is a pauper, you'll be crying in the future. Chapter 4610. Bai Sheng did not listen to a single word they said. She was thinking that although she did not know much about Gu Chengze's family background, it was impossible for her to lie to him. She had nothing at all. Why would such an outstanding man lie to her? Even if he lied to her, she would not lose out. Bai Sheng, you have to be more careful. A female colleague beside her poked her head in disappointment. Bai Sheng finally reacted and let out an ah. Snacks? What snacks? After a moment of dead silence, the office suddenly erupted in laughter. Ha 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 ha. Bai Sheng, you foodie. She told you to be more careful, but you only have snacks in your head? Bai Sheng, you're too cute. I'm really afraid that you'll be kidnapped. Haven't I already been kidnapped? There was another round of boos.
Bai Sheng's face was dark when a message suddenly came on her phone. It was from Gu Chengza. She opened the message and saw a few lines from Gu Chengza. When you're on break next time, let's go take a look at the house. Bai Sheng was a little stunned. House? She didn't understand and replied, What house? Within a few seconds, Gu Chengza replied almost instantly, Our home, idiot. Home. Was it a wedding house? Usually, when two people got married, the first process was to buy a house as their wedding house. Since they were getting married and were independent from each other, they had to have their own place to live first. However, the housing prices in the capital were too expensive now. Her internship was a month and she could only get 2,000 to 3,000 yuan at most. After she became a full-time employee, she could get a car, a bonus, and performance. Her dream was to be a famous designer. However, in such a company, there was no room for her to use her abilities. Her dream had become wishful thinking. It was difficult for ordinary designers to survive. The housing prices in the capital were millions or even tens of millions. She replied, I don't have much money on me. I can't afford much. As soon as the message was sent, she was a little disappointed. She felt that she did not do anything. This time, Gu Chengza's reply was simpler. I do. Bai Sheng's heart skipped a beat. What's the budget? There's no budget. It mainly depends on the quality of the house. Look at the new buildings online first and do your homework in advance. After handing in the design draft, Bai Sheng had nothing to do, so he searched for real estate on the internet. Recently, there were many new properties. Among them, there were 3 that had the best reputation. One was Shengyu's Spring River Heavenly Seal. Another was Hang Yuan's Linxing First Grade Restaurant, and the last one was Bona's Seine River Garden. It was Bai Sheng's first time looking at a house, so he was dazzled by all the introductions. At the side, a few colleagues saw Bai Sheng browsing the web and went over curiously. They saw that she was actually looking at houses. Bai Sheng, are you planning to buy a house? Spring River Heavenly Seal? I heard that this building is very expensive. Bai Sheng was confused. Didn't you say that it hasn't opened yet? It just so happens that it opens this Saturday. I plan to go to the sales office to take a look. His colleagues were shocked. Are you really going to buy it? Bai Sheng said truthfully, my husband said he wanted to buy a house, so I did my homework first. My aunt is one of the higher-ups in the Spring River Heavenly Seal. She said that this house is worth at least 200,000 yuan per square meter. 200,000. It was so scary. The surrounding colleagues were also in disbelief. So expensive? Chapter 46:11. Bai Sheng was a little worried. It was so expensive. Did he really want to buy it? Bai Sheng, you have to be careful about buying a house. At the side, a female colleague in her 30s advised her, don't be used by others so easily. What's wrong? The female colleague said, I finally understand now. When it comes to buying a house, you have to be clear-headed. A few years ago, the price of houses was going to increase. My husband and my mother-in-law discussed it and decided to buy a house. When I heard that it was good to buy a house, I agreed. My husband is a local and has a house, but it's an old and small house. He sold it to make up for the down payment. But guess what happened when he bought the house? Everyone looked at each other. The female colleague said angrily, my husband asked me to write my mother-in-law's name. At first, I didn't understand, so I asked him what he meant. He said that the money for the down payment was from my mother-in-law selling her old house, so it was only right for the house to be written in their name. I can only blame myself for being muddle-headed. At that time, I actually thought that what he said made sense, so I acquiesced. However, since this house is written in my mother-in-law's name, they should be the ones paying for it. In the end, right after I gave birth, I had to go back to work immediately and pay off their loan. In the end, this house wasn't mine. Now, I'm being led by the nose by my mother-in-law's family. The more the woman spoke, the angrier she became. Her eyes were red. It was obvious that her words of consolation were from the bottom of her heart. The housing prices in Beijing are so high now. The pressure of paying off the loan every month is not small. Some men marry a wife and don't have a share of the house, but they are clamoring to pay off the loan. Most importantly, in the end, when the loan is almost paid off, the man has an affair. In the end, The one who leaves with nothing is the woman. What bad luck. There was suddenly a wave of resentment in the office. Many of the colleagues were married, and they couldn't help but complain about the unfairness of their in-laws. The more Bai Shang listened, the more depressed she felt. She didn't like to be in contact with such negative energy. It wasn't that she didn't have empathy, but she couldn't understand why she didn't live a good life and went to the garbage dump to find her husband. Bai Shang, you have to be careful. If the man asks you to take the loan, don't do it. Bai Hao smiled but didn't say anything. In the afternoon, when Bai Ran was about to get off work, he saw a phaeton parked in the parking lot of the company when he walked to the gate of the company to check in. She didn't recognize the car, but she remembered the license plate number. Bai Ran walked towards the car. Gu Chengze pushed the door open and got out. He leaned against the car and smiled. Let's go. Bai Yan replied with a and went around to the passenger door. At the entrance of the company, a few colleagues were also going downstairs to clock in and get ready to go home. When they saw Bai Ran get into a car, and when they saw Gu Chengze get into the same car as her, they felt terrible. That man is so handsome. That's Bai Ran's husband? It's really a phaeton. This man's family owns a mine. Did you see the license plate of his car? Beijing A66666. This license plate is even more expensive than this car. A female colleague sneered. I think her husband might be a chauffeur. He's the chauffeur of a big boss, driving his boss's car out for a grand occasion. Chapter 46:12. That's right. It's very likely that he's from a car rental company. Didn't Bai Shang say that her husband is an ordinary white-collar worker? This car has a company license plate, and it's so good. It's either a fake license plate or a boss car. His colleagues began to discuss among themselves. Bai Shang really knows how to brag. Look at her tone. She said that she wants to buy a house in the Spring River Heavenly Seal. Can she really afford it? Who doesn't know how to brag? It didn't cost anything. Ha ha ha. Suddenly, a male colleague spoke up for Bai Shang. Maybe Bai Shang is innocent too. That's right. Bai Shang is so innocent. She doesn't know anything at all. Didn't you hear what she said? She got married in a flash and met him on a blind date. She doesn't even know that man. At this time, many older women sneered again. Blind date? Io, what's so good about a man you met on a blind date? Exactly. That man is so handsome, and he can even afford to buy a house in the Spring River Heavenly Seal. How many women would want such a man? How could he be reduced to a blind date? On the way, Bai Shang found a briefcase in the back seat. There were many floor plans of different developers inside. Can I have a look? Yeah, it's for you to see. She was so curious that she picked it up and read it page by page. Is there anything you like? Bai Shang looked around and still felt that the layout of the Spring River Heavenly Seal was the most satisfactory. However, the unit price of the Spring River Heavenly Seal was extremely expensive. She did not dare to imagine that she could live in a house with a Spring River Heavenly Seal. The apartment is not bad, but it's so expensive. At the crossroad, Gu Chengze stopped the car and said to her, "The Spring River Heavenly Seal is very expensive, but I have an internal discount." Internal discount? How good is the internal discount? Gu Chengze smiled and said, 50% off. Bai Shang covered his mouth in surprise. 50% off? Yes. So cheap. When you're resting, we'll go to the sales office. If you like it, we'll buy it. Bai Shang was caught off guard. Wait, aren't you going to look at a few more buildings? Gu Chengze did not think much of it. Aren't you most satisfied with the layout of this place? Yes, I am very satisfied, Gu Chengze said gently. I've seen the Spring River Heavenly Seal's model house. It's exquisitely decorated. Moreover, the developers under Shang Yu are also the best in the real estate industry. Yes. That night, someone tagged Bai Shang in the group chat. Bai Shang, didn't you want to buy a house in the Spring River Heavenly Seal? I've asked my aunt. The flats with sky gardens will be on sale soon. The unit price will be 250,000 renminbi. The price varies from floor to floor. Do you really want to buy it? The smallest unit in this building was 140 square meters. In this way, one unit would cost more than 20 million. You have to pay a few million for a loan. In other words, can you really afford it?
Bai Sheng did not reply. Because she didn't know if she would buy the Spring River Heavenly Seal, she decided to wait a few days before going to the sales office to look at the model houses before making a decision. However, she didn't expect that these colleagues weren't doing it out of concern, but out of amusement. Some people really couldn't bear to see others living better than them. The jealousy between women was often very scary. They just couldn't bear to see that Bai Sheng was prettier than them and luckier than them to marry such a good husband. Therefore, everyone was waiting to see her make a fool of herself. The next day, when Bai Sheng arrived at the company, the female colleague came over. Chapter 46:13. I didn't check my phone yesterday. Bai Yu asked blankly. What's the matter? I asked my aunt yesterday. She said that the Spring River Heavenly Seal's property prices are very high. Are you sure you want to buy it? The problem is that the down payment is a few million. Also, it requires a high credit rating. Bai Yu smiled. Thank you. However, it's not up to me to decide whether to buy it or not. It's still up to my husband. After all, she did not have much money to pay. Bai Yu had always felt guilty about this. She was mentally prepared to work hard to repay the loan if Gu Chengze took a loan to buy the house. Is your aunt one of the higher-ups in the Spring River Heavenly Seal? Yes. The female colleague was obviously a little guilty. What higher-ups? She was just someone from the sales office who brought people to look at houses. Her aunt was older than her, but she was a few years older than her. However, her performance in the sales office was not bad either. The higher-ups she mentioned were just for show. Anyway, Bai Yu would never be able to afford a house in the sales office. Therefore, she said, if you really want to buy it, let me know. I'll contact my aunt and see if she can give you a discount. At the mention of discounts, Bai Yu thought of what Gu Chengze said. 50% discount. Can your aunt give us a discount of less than 50%? For a moment, the entire office was dead silent. Everyone looked at her in surprise. After a while, the office erupted in laughter. Ha 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 ha. 50% discount. Where can you buy a house with a 50% discount? And it's a house in the Spring River Heavenly Seal. Unless you're a relative of the royal family, how can you buy a house at such a low price? The cost isn't even enough. The quality of the houses in the Spring River Heavenly Seal is so high. 50% discount. You must be dreaming. Bai Yu, who told you that there's a 50% discount? You're not being cheated, are you? Bai Yu was a little unhappy when she heard the ridicule. She turned around and faced the computer. She did not want to talk anymore. Someone nudged her. Bai Yu, there are so many ways to cheat people nowadays. Don't trust people so easily. Don't be cheated of millions just to take advantage of others. Exactly. A few million can't buy a house. Bai Yu was so angry that she wanted to ignore them. Gu Chengze would not lie to her, and there was no reason for him to do so. If he said that it was a house with a 50% discount, he must have some connections. Shengyu Building. In the president's office. Gu Chengze walked to the door of the office. His assistant was standing by the door. When he saw him, he immediately nodded respectfully. Hello, Mr. Gu. President has been waiting for you for a long time. As the assistant spoke, he opened the door for him. Gu Chengze walked in and immediately saw the name tag on the desk. Yun Tianyu. The current Shengyu had already undergone a change of dynasty. Shengyu's former boss, Mu Yaja, was also the company's chairman. When Yun Tianyu was 20 years old, he passed the position to him and traveled the world with Yun Shishir. Yun Tianyu was currently in charge of the Royal Academy. Initially, the board of directors was skeptical of Yun Tianyu's ascension to the CEO's position, but little did they know that handling Shengyu Financial Group's matters was child's play to him. To him, Shengyu was just a supervisor. There are two young masters in the Mu family. Even if the throne is passed down, shouldn't it be the eldest son's turn to ascend the throne? Chapter 46:14. The office desk was neat and tidy, but there was no one in sight. Gu Chengze scanned his surroundings and saw a man in a black shirt mixing coffee in front of the wine cabinet. He walked over and could smell the aroma of the coffee even from afar. His favorite beverage was cola since he was young. Now, as he grew up, his favorite cola had been replaced by coffee. Hearing footsteps behind him, Yun Tianyu slowly turned around. His thin lips curled into a smile as his gaze landed on the man. "What brings you here today?" Just as he turned around, a handsome face came into view. It was said that sons took after their mother in terms of looks. This was indeed the case when they were young. However, as they grew up, Yun Tianyu and Mu Yichen's looks gradually changed. When they were young, it was impossible to tell who was who when they stood next to each other. If one did not look at their height and only looked at their appearance, one would not be able to tell the difference. The children's bone structure was extremely similar. However, as they grew up, their appearance changed. Slowly, Mu Yichen looked more and more like Yun Shishir. In the June district, he was a lieutenant. Young and promising. He had a face that was prettier than a woman's. Many ladies in the military eagerly chased after him, but none of them caught his eye. Yun Tianyu, on the other hand, was clearly more handsome than Mu Yichen when he was young, but as he grew up, he gradually resembled Gong Jie and Mu Yaja. Although Gong Jie and Yun Shishir were fraternal twins, Gong Jie's face was obviously more handsome. Yun Tianyu resembled Mu Yaja the most, especially in the shape of his face. It was as if it had been sculpted by a knife. When he stood next to Mu Yichen, he was actually taller than Mu Yichen. When they were young, Mu Yichen had always bragged about his height in front of Yun Tianyu. However, when they were in high school, Yun Tianyu's height increased by leaps and bounds overnight. He actually shot up to 1.7 meters. From then on, his height grew at an insane rate. In one semester, he had grown 10 centimeters taller. During that time, Yun Shishir was so excited that she gave Yun Tianyu calcium supplements and urged him to exercise. During puberty, Yun Tianyu's excess energy was all spent on sports. In the end, Yun Tianyu's sports results were even better than Mu Yichen's. Mu Yaja was 1.88 meters tall, while Gong Jie was 1.9 meters tall. Yun Tianyu had actually grown to 1.91 meters, which was 2 centimeters taller than Mu Yichen. Back then, when Yun Tianyu was still in college at the age of 16, Mu Yaja found it unbelievable when they measured his height to be 1.88 meters. Not long after, he learned that his son had grown to 1.9 meters, so he went around bragging that his son was taller than him. All kinds of boasting. Everyone felt like they had just been F***ed. Damn it, as an old man, his son skipped a grade to go to university at the age of 16. He was bragging about his height. What a boast. What they were envious of was not his height of 1.9 meters but his admission to St. Andrews University at the age of 16. When Mu Yichen grew up and started secondary school, his brain finally started to develop for the second time. He finally broke free from the awkward period of his childhood IQ deficiency. Yun Shishir teased that Mu Yaja must have secretly topped up Mu Yichen's IQ. After graduating from secondary school, Mu Yichen and Yun Tianyu were admitted to the city's key high school together and then directly entered the military. At the age of 20, he was already a senior sergeant. Chapter 46:15. Sometimes there would be family gatherings. More than a decade ago, due to an influenza outbreak, the Gu and Mu families became friends. Since then, they often held family gatherings, and the children of the two families got to know each other very well. At these gatherings, the children and adults formed two different societies. Yun Tianyu and Gu Linqi were together, and both loved to brag about their younger sister. Yun Tianyu loved to boast about how cute Yueyao was and how she would definitely be a beauty when she grew up. Gu Linqi was not to be outdone and boasted about how gentle and sensible Qianqian was. Mu Yichen and Gu Chengze, on the other hand, would brag about how good they were at fighting. When the adults sat together, Mu Yaja and Gu Jinglian boasted the most. Sometimes, when Gong Jie and Hua Jin returned from Darkwind Island, they would join them in boasting. Chu Ho and Yun Shishir were helpless. They felt that the friendship between the two families was exaggerated. Yun Tianyu, who was leaning back in his chair, widened his eyes in confusion when he heard that Gu Chengze wanted to buy a house. You want to buy a house? Yes. The Gu family has so many houses, and every inch of land is worth its weight in gold. With so many properties, why are you buying from me? Gu Chengze said disdainfully, It's not like you don't know that my biological father is like a stepfather. Gu Jinglian was especially harsh on Gu Chengze. Even the apartment he was living in now was rented from Gu Jinglian and had to pay rent every year. Yun Tianyu sympathized with him. It was said that boys were the least favored in the Gu family.
Gu Xinghan, who was the youngest, was treated well. After all, he was still in school, while Gu Linqi and Gu Chengze had it worse than the other. Qian was different. She was still in school, but she bought all kinds of branded bags one after another. She had just entered high school and was preparing to take the driving test, yet she had already bought a Maserati. As the saying went, this bowl of water was uneven. In Gu Jinglian's hands, Gu Chengze seemed to be picked up from the streets. Gu Chengze sighed. Every family has its difficulties. You're not much better off. Yun Tianyou's handsome face fell when he heard that. His biological father was no better than Gu Jinglian. He had just turned 20, but Mu Yaja couldn't wait to hold a board meeting and leave the entire Shengyu to him. Then, he hugged his beloved mommy and traveled around the world. This was what the two of them had agreed on. When he grew up, the company would be handed over to him. Afterwards, Yun Shishir also retired from the entertainment industry, and the two of them traveled around the world together. When Yun Tianyu protested, Mu Yaja said cheekily, "If you're not convinced, then hurry up and get married. Give birth to a son as smart as you to take over, and then you'll be free." Even though he appeared to be indignant on the surface, he did not complain at all. He knew that his daddy had doted on his mommy for 20 years. Mommy said that if she wanted a love that would never change, Daddy really doted on her for 20 years. What touched him the most was that 2 years ago, when his mother attended a class reunion, a woman in her 40s, who was of the same age as her, looked extremely old. They also used high-end skincare products to maintain their faces, but no matter how one looked at them, they still looked old. Mommy was different. It was as if she had eaten preservatives. Her face was so tender that it did not change at all. It was not entirely true that there were no changes at all. Chapter 46:16. Could it be that this depended on their youthful mentality? Ever since they got married, Mu Yaja had always doted on her. She had never been bullied before. After being married for so many years, they had never gotten angry even once. Not only did they treat each other with respect, but the longer they were married, the more they behaved like a young couple and slowly developed more interests. Some people said that if they treated each other with respect and did not quarrel after marriage, their love would lose its vitality and passion. Actually, this was not the case. If one could find the person who was perfectly compatible with them in this world, they would tolerate and be loyal to each other. Furthermore, a poor couple had many sorrows. Other than the issues of principle between a couple, most of the disputes between them were trivial. With the Mu family's financial situation, there was no need for them to fuss over daily necessities. Hence, they did not have the chance to quarrel. Most importantly, everyone in the Mu family was dedicated to protecting this family. Be it Mu Yaja, Yun Shishir, Mu Yichen, or Yun Tianyu, they all knew how difficult it was for this family to get to where it was now. Hence, every member was protecting each other. During their adolescence, Mu Yichen and Yun Tianyu did not even last long in their rebellious phase. Both of them had gone through life and death situations and cherished each other immensely. Your daddy and mommy went on a trip again? They are out all year round. It just so happened that Yueyao's exams ended, so they picked up Yueyao and went on a road trip to Country M. Gu Chengze face-bombed. I'm so envious. Back to the topic. Why are you buying a house? Gu Chengze and Yun Tianyu looked at each other and winked mysteriously. I'm married. Yun Tianyu was so shocked that he almost spat out his coffee. You're married? Yes. Yun Tianyu felt unwell all over. That's why I want to buy a wedding house. Gu Chengze did not forget to remind him. Remember to give me a 50% discount. Who said I'll give you a discount? Yun Tianyu disapproved. I don't remember promising you a discount. Gu Chengze said. Did you forget that you said that if I'm the first to get married, you'll sell the house in the Spring River Heavenly Seal to me at a 50% discount? His expression froze. That time, it seemed to be a gathering between him and Gu Chengze. When the alcohol kicked in, Yun Tianyu made a casual promise, and Gu Chengze took it to heart. Gu Chengze laughed evilly. It's settled then. I'll wait for you at the sales office this weekend. Why are you waiting for me? Who has the authority to give a 50% discount in the sales office? Gu Chengze rested his chin on his hands. It seems like only you have this right. Yun Tianyou's eyes turned cold. Ah, right? Gu Chengze furrowed his brows and thought of something else. I remember you promised me that if I was the first to get married, you would give me a house and a Maybach. A Mercedes-Benz Maybach would cost at least 2 million yuan. However, no matter what, the 2 million plus yuan was nothing compared to the 50% discount on the Spring River Heavenly Seal. Yun Tianyou's heart throbbed painfully. Although he was in charge of Shengyu, the difference of more than 10 million yuan was close to 20 million yuan. He had to pay for it himself. Chapter 46:17. Yun Tianyu could no longer hold it in. His handsome face was filled with disdain. Gu Chengze, do you want me to warn you not to push your luck? Don't tell me you're marrying that Maybach just for this house with a 50% discount? Ignoring him, Gu Chengze snapped his fingers. It's settled then. Wait a minute. He cocked a brow. Why? Are you going back on your word? No. Yun Tianyu snorted. I'm a man of my word. I can't possibly ruin my reputation. Anyway, will she be here this weekend too? Who? What do you think? Gu Chengze realized that the boy was referring to was Bai Zai. She'll be here. Are you going to pay in full or take a loan? Full payment. Yun Tianyu felt a little better now. If this fellow did not pay in full even with a 50% discount, he would definitely kick him out of the office. Leaving Shengyu building, Gu Chengze was secretly pleased at the thought of Yun Tianyou's heartbroken expression earlier. Since they were young, Yun Tianyu had always suppressed and bullied him. Now that he had suffered such a huge loss, he could finally turn the tables. Just as he got into the car, Bai Zai suddenly called. He picked up the call and heard her careful voice on the other end. Han, hubby, I have something to discuss with you. Her way of addressing him was extremely pleasing to his ears. What's the matter? What's the matter? That. Can we postpone the purchase of the house for now? Bai Zai's hesitant voice made his heart ache inexplicably. He was puzzled. What's the matter? I've asked around. The house at Spring River Heavenly Seal is really expensive. I can't afford it now. I've thought of taking a loan with you, but I'm afraid that I can't afford it. Hubby, it doesn't matter where we live. I just don't want you to bear so much pressure. She finally mustered up her courage and told him her heartfelt thoughts. Her heart ached for him. It was not worth it to bear a debt just to buy a house. Gu Chengze was touched when he heard this. Did this silly girl really think that he was an ordinary salaried worker? However, he did not tell her his identity. Such an intimate nickname was on the tip of his tongue time and again, but he could not bear to say it out loud. He was afraid that she would forget about him. That was one of his concerns. He still hoped that she was with him not because of the memories of their youth. He wanted to start afresh with her. Still, what he said was true. Strictly speaking, he was indeed receiving a salary from Gu Corporation. The position of CEO was only in name for the time being, and it was based on an annual salary. She was a salaried worker with a salary of a few thousand yuan a month. Gu Chengze smiled and said, Who said anything about a loan? I'm going to buy it in full. Full payment? Yes, with you. Many local people had to sell their ancestral property to afford a house. Chapter 46:18. Bai Ran stared at the computer screen. Before she could react, a female colleague came up to her. Bai Ran, have you thought about it? Do you plan to buy a house at the Spring River Heavenly Seal? If you do, I'll ask my aunt if she can give you a discount. She paused and tried to persuade her again. Don't believe what others say about a 50% discount. That's impossible. How can a house at the Spring River Heavenly Seal be sold at 50%? The developer will lose money. Bai Ran's eyes widened in confusion. But my husband said that he's already booked it. Let's go to the sales office this weekend. If we're satisfied with the layout, we'll buy it. Really? At that moment, everyone in the office gathered around. Everyone was shocked that Bai Ran wanted to buy a house at the Spring River Heavenly Seal. Everyone in the company, including the CEO of the design company, was renting a house. A house in the capital was not something that could be bought easily. Without a net worth of tens of millions, who could afford a house in the capital? Even the B-list celebrities in the entertainment industry were renting houses. They could not afford one at all. Bai Ran, your husband is so rich? The houses at the Spring River Heavenly Seal are all garden-style houses with sky gardens. They're easily hundreds and dozens of flats. They're worth tens of millions. Exactly. Bai Ran,
Did you marry a rich second-generation heir? He drives a Phaeton. The license plate is so good. He must be running a company. Some of them were really envious of Byran. Some of them were still suspicious. Byran was obviously bragging. Many of her colleagues in the office dreamed of settling down in the capital. However, the capital was only so big. With so many people squeezing into the capital, those who stayed in the end were the cream of the crop. Byran was annoyed by the questions. We'll talk about it when the time comes. She was too lazy to explain so much to them. Anyway, since Gu Chengza said that he was going to buy it, she would listen to him. After all, buying a house was not up to her. She always felt that she couldn't contribute and felt a little guilty. At that thought, Byran rested her chin on her hand. She was worried about the house. At noon, in the cafeteria, Byran sat alone at the table and ate. The others gathered around the table next to her and started whispering. Do you think Byran's 50% discount house is real? How is that possible? I'm just telling you. I'm just boasting. Do you believe me? Do you really believe it? My aunt said that if they could buy the house at a 50% discount, they would cut off their heads and give them to her. Ha ha ha, do you have to go all out in a bet? Bai Hao sat aside and vaguely heard them talking about him. She glanced at them and felt nauseous. At first, she thought that these colleagues were genuinely concerned about her, but in the end, they were just waiting to watch a good show. However, she didn't care. She didn't get along well with her colleagues to begin with. Ever since she was young, she had always been a loner. Because of her low self-esteem, she was not good at interacting with others. Therefore, she wasn't close to these colleagues to begin with. She didn't care what these people thought of her. Nowadays, people don't even need to pay for bragging. Exactly. Maybe Bai Yu herself believed it. Do you think her husband of unknown origin is obviously lying to her? Chapter 46:19. As soon as she said that, there was the sound of hurried footsteps. Before the female colleague could finish her sentence, she was grabbed by the collar. She turned her face in astonishment, but Bai Yu had already slapped her. Pa! It was a clean and neat slap. Bai Ran. You hit someone? Why did you hit someone, Bai Ran? The scene was chaotic. The female colleague who was hit was called Ai Fei. She was stunned and her eyes turned red. Bai Ran was livid and defended Ai Fei at the same time. Idiot, why are you acting crazy for no reason? That's right. Why did you hit her? Bai Ran said in a low voice. Because she crossed my bottom line. What bottom line? What did Ai Fei do to you? Bai Ran said with reddened eyes, talking about someone else's husband behind their back and saying that her husband is a scammer. Does that make you feel superior? Ai Fei looked at her in disbelief. She did not expect her ears to be so sharp that she heard it. Bai Ran said angrily, what's wrong with men on blind dates? Are all men on blind dates trash? Why should my husband be talked about by all of you? Ai Fei, do you have nothing better to do? Ai Fei was angry and wronged, but she could not defend herself because she was in the wrong. The next second, her tears fell. Bai Ran sneered. You still feel wronged? Ai Fei stood up and tried to hold back her tears. Bai Ran, I was just being nice. Didn't your husband say that he can buy a house in the Spring River Heavenly Seal at a 50% discount? Didn't your husband say that he would go this weekend? My aunt is at the Spring River Heavenly Seal. I'll wait for you at the Spring River Heavenly Seal this weekend. If you can buy it at a 50% discount, I'll kowtow to you. If your husband is bragging, then both of you will kneel in front of me. Is that the problem? Bai Ran was confused. Is the problem whether he can afford the house? The problem is, what right do you have to say that my husband is a scammer? Since he's already married, why would he lie to you? If he can't afford a house in the Spring River Heavenly Seal, then he can't afford it. Why is he bragging? If it's not a scammer, then what is it? Wake up. With that, Ai Fei kicked the table away, turned around, and left. Bai Hao was also enraged. The situation was extremely awkward. The director of the design office suddenly walked over and saw a few people gathered in a circle. Everyone's expression was stiff and he was a little puzzled. What happened? Bai Hao didn't say anything. He turned around and left, leaving the director bewildered. What's going on? Why do you look so unhappy?
Who provoked her? She had a fight with AI Faye. Why did you quarrel? A talkative colleague told him about the enmity between Bai Chong and AI Faye. After hearing that, the director couldn't help but smile. How naive. I thought it was a big deal. With that, he shook his head and left as well. Everyone looked at each other. For a moment, they didn't know whether to sit down and continue eating or return to the office. For the entire afternoon, the entire office fell into a dead silence. Ivy had been secretly rolling her eyes. The two of them sat facing each other, separated by the glass railing. Byran immediately went back to work. He drank a cup of coffee and began to draft the design seriously. Chapter 46:20. Byran, why are you so serious about your work? Isn't your husband very rich? Why don't you just stay at home and take care of your husband and children? Let your husband take care of you. Byran buried her head and ignored her. She pretended not to hear anything and continued with her work. What's the meaning of not saying anything? Are you feeling guilty or something? I promised to wait for you at the sales office of the Spring River Heavenly Seal on Friday. Don't disappoint me then. AI Faye, that's enough. One of her colleagues could not stand it anymore and said, Byran is not saying anything. Why are you still talking about this? We're all colleagues and see each other all the time. Forgive and forget. Where it is possible to make mistakes, one should spare them. AI Faye was angry again. Hey, let's get this straight. She slapped me first. What did I do? Why did she do this to me? She slapped me. Who would tolerate it if it were you? Do you think it's easy for you to talk? What's wrong with me? My good intentions were rewarded with a slap. Why should I take this lying down? Byran still did not hear anything. In fact, she would not be angry normally. No matter how others humiliated her, she was used to it. Ever since she was young, she was famous for having a good temper under Yi Yuqin's influence. However, AI Faye had crossed her bottom line. It did not matter how she humiliated her. However, she could not point her sword at Gu Chengza. Moreover, did it have anything to do with her whether Gu Chengza lied to her or not? Could it be that proving that she married an unreliable husband, a husband who cheated her marriage, could reflect her sense of superiority? Why were there always such women in his life? Why were they always hostile to other women? No matter what, they could not bear to see others living a better life than them. In fact, the grudge between her and AI Faye had been formed long after she had joined the company. Before Byran joined the company, AI Faye was a flower in the design office. Her design skills were not that outstanding, but she was liked by her male colleagues and superiors. She was especially good at talking and sweet-talking. Her male colleagues and superiors all liked her. As for her female colleagues, she was not so polite. However, because she had a good relationship with her boss, none of the female colleagues in the office dared to offend her. Instead, they would deliberately curry favor with her. However, after Byran entered this company, this twisted relationship between colleagues was broken. Many male colleagues fell in love with this innocent and beautiful girl. Everyone knew that AI Faye was actually very scheming. Her words to please them were all against her heart. But that was how society was. Everyone would rather listen to false flattery. Byran, on the other hand, did not know how to deal with her colleagues. However, her natural and straightforward personality made her quite popular among her colleagues. However, many female colleagues did not like her. Jealousy between women was always unreasonable. Although looks were innate and there was no way to compare, Byran had become the public enemy of his female colleagues because of his appearance. However, Bai was already used to it. AI Faye suddenly kicked her chair. I'm talking to you. Do you hear me? Also, I'll be waiting for you at the sales office of the Spring River Heavenly Seal on Friday. If you know what's good for you, you'd better apologize to me now. She was trying to establish her dominance. Chapter 46:21. AI Faye raised her eyebrows disapprovingly. Why are you staring at me like that? She smiled and said casually, You've really put in a lot of effort to prove to me that you're not doing well. AI Faye's face almost fell. She snorted coldly and did not say anything else. She lowered her head and continued to play with her phone. After work, Bai Yan punched her card in loneliness. As usual, Gu Chengza was waiting for her at the entrance of the company. Bai Yan walked to the car. Gu Chengze smiled at her but saw that she did not look well. His expression froze. What's wrong? The disappointment on Bai Yan's face made his heart ache. Nothing. Bai Yan hugged him. She did not know if she was feeling sorry for him or for herself. She felt sorry for him. He had been working hard to be a good husband and took good care of her. However, for some reason, he was being slandered behind her back by her outrageous colleagues. She felt sorry for herself. She had worked so hard, but in the end, she could not get anything good from others. She was like a star in the design office. Her design drafts were always the most important for every order. However, it seemed that many people could not tolerate her. It was really unfair. Gu Chengze noticed something on her face, but he was not in a hurry to ask. Instead, he said, "Let's talk in the car, okay?" Okay. Bai Yan obediently got into the car. She did not speak along the way, and Gu Chengze was not in a hurry to speak either. When they reached home, he held her hand and went into the room. He carried her to sit on his lap. What's wrong? Is there something on your mind? Bai Yan smiled bitterly. No. Clearly there is. Gu Chengze's heart ached for her. What's on your mind? Why don't you tell me? Maybe I can help you solve it? It's nothing serious. Did you have a conflict with your colleagues? Gu Chengze guessed it immediately. Especially when he saw her flickering eyes, he was sure of it. Other than that, he could not think of any other possibility. She went to the company happily, but when she came back, she had such an expression. She must have suffered some grievances at the company. His tone was so gentle that Bai Yan could feel his affection. She felt wronged and her eyes reddened. She felt wronged for him. He was so good. Why should he be criticized because of her? I'm sorry. Her inexplicable apology made him a little flustered. What's going on? I had a conflict with a female colleague today. She didn't want to hide it from him, so she confessed. She said that you were lying to me when you said that you wanted to buy a house in the Spring River Heavenly Seal. It's impossible to buy a house there at a 50% discount. She said that you were lying to me, and I slapped her in anger. I can't stand her talking about you like that. Bai Hao lifted his head. I don't care if you're lying to me or not. She doesn't have the right to criticize. So she argued with me. Hearing this, Gu Chengze heaved a sigh of relief. So it was because of this. He thought it was a big deal. However, this silly girl had actually fought with others in order to protect her. He really didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Amazing. I'm Shang-er. You look like a little white rabbit. I didn't expect you to be able to scratch people when you're angry. Bai Hao frowned. You're still laughing? She said that she'll be waiting for us at the Spring River Heavenly Seal sales office on Friday. Chapter 46:22. Why is she waiting for us? Bai Ran explained. She doesn't believe that you can buy a house at a 50% discount. Let her be. Gu Chengze did not take her seriously. It's not worth getting angry over this kind of person. Bai Ran was surprised. You're not angry? Was he so good-tempered? Gu Chengze smiled and rubbed her head. I'm angry. Why was he smiling when he was obviously angry? Why are you smiling when you're angry? I'm angry at her, but I don't like to bring my anger home because of someone else. Especially in front of Madam. If he was angry because of this, Bai Ran would feel even more guilty. Since he was young, Chu Ho had taught him one thing. No matter what kind of anger he suffered outside, don't bring it home. You can talk, but you can't complain. Home is a harbor, but it's not a trash can. The harmony of a family needs to be maintained together. He had remembered this since he was young. Then, Bai Ran asked tentatively, are we still going this weekend? Yes, of course. Why wouldn't we go? Gu Chengze did not think much of it. I've already made an appointment to buy it. Bai Ran was worried that if she bumped into Ai Fei and her aunt on the weekend, it would be another war. I know what you're worried about. Don't be afraid, I have a way to solve it. Gu Chengze rubbed her head lovingly. You just have to wait for the signature obediently. Signature? Bai Hao was bewildered. Sign what? The property contract. Gu Chengze did not know whether to laugh or cry. You need to sign a contract to buy a house. Don't you want to sign it? No, no, no. Bai Ran quickly waved her hand. I'd better not sign it. This time, Gu Chengze was really dumbfounded.
What? He suddenly held her face in his hands and knocked on her head seriously. Bai Ran slapped his hand away.
What are you doing?
Gu Chengzi said seriously, I'm trying to see if there's a brain in your head.
Bai Ran was speechless. Was he mocking her for being stupid? I just feel that I didn't do anything. It's a little embarrassing to sign my name. It doesn't matter if you write it or not. You have a share in the house. We are married, so this is considered a joint property. You can't escape.
Bai Hao was even more confused.
Then why do I have to sign it?
Ritual. Gu Chengzi didn't think much of it.
I think that the real estate certificate needs to have 2 names on it.
Only then will it feel like a family ceremony. Ugh, Bai Ran nodded. Then I will work hard to earn money to support my family.
Idiot.
He should be the one raising her. With such a small body, he still wanted to compete with him to be the head of the family.
Dream on.
Bai Hao suddenly hugged him. Did I cause trouble for you? Gu Chengzi said seriously, even if you're a troublemaker, you're still my wife.
You're my wife.
Bai Hao was amused by his serious tone. Ha ha ha. She laughed for a while, then suddenly sighed. Gu Chengzi was caught off guard by her emotional roller coaster. Why are you sighing?
Do you know?
Bai Ran suddenly hugged him tightly.
I haven't known you for long, and we just got married.
However, since we were young, you were the one who treated me the best. He couldn't believe it.